The moving truck was already backed up to the porch when Wade told her, "Mama, sign here, they're waiting," and did not look up from the clipboard to see her hands shake. Ruth Ann Vance was 78 years old. She had lived on that porch or close enough to reach it in 4 steps since 1968. She took the pen. Her hand did shake, some, but she signed her name the way she signed everything. Straight and even. Ruth Ann Vance. No flourish. $89,000. That was the number written at the top of the paper, in Wade's handwriting, though the check wouldn't come from Wade. It would come from a company called Bear Claw Aggregates, out of Lexington, and nobody in that yard said the word quarry out loud, not yet. She said nothing about the Springhouse door. 2 movers in matching gray shirts carried her china cabinet past her, empty, the dishes already boxed. Her son's wife stood by the truck with a clipboard of her own, checking items off like groceries. A crew of men she'd never met were already walking the fence line behind the barn, taking pictures with their phones. Ruth had raised 1 son, buried 1 husband, and put up 41 years of chow-chow in that kitchen, jar by jar, and she was still, at that exact moment, on her knees at the pantry shelf, going through it one more time. She was not crying. She was reading labels. Chow Chow, September 1979. Chow Chow, September 2003. She lined the jars up by year, oldest to newest, the way she'd done every fall since Nixon was president, because a woman ought to know what she has, and when she put it up, and where. "Mama, you don't need to be doing that," Wade said. "They're going to pack the kitchen last. Come sit down." "I'm just looking," Ruth said. "You've got 20 minutes before the truck to Sunset Manor gets here." She looked at him then. 46 years old, her only child, standing in his father's kitchen in a golf shirt, holding a clipboard like it was a shield. "I know what time the truck comes, Wade," she said. "I raised you. I know how to read a clock." He didn't answer that. He looked back down at the paperwork, at the line where the notary still needed her thumbprint, and he said, "This is just easier for everybody, Mama. The house is too much for you. You know it is." "The house was never too much for me," Ruth said. "It was too much for you to keep coming out here." That landed somewhere behind his eyes. She saw it, a flicker, and then it was gone, because Wade Vance had a way of letting hard things pass through him like weather. He had put $12,000 down on a lake house 3 weeks before, over near Cave Run, and told his wife Denise the rest of the farm money would clear his truck loan by June. He had not told his mother that part. He didn't need to. She had already guessed it, the way she guessed most things about her son quietly and kept it to herself, the way she kept most things. The ridge behind the Springhouse never came up in any of it. 40 acres of scrub oak, blackberry bramble, and gray rock. Nobody had grazed a cow on since before Wade was born. The lawyer's letter listed it as part of the parcel, lumped in under acreage, no different on paper than the hayfield or the garden plot. Wade had walked that ridge exactly twice in his life, both times as a boy, both times to see if there was anything worth stealing from a rattlesnake den his father swore was up there. There wasn't. He'd never gone back. Ruth had gone back plenty. Her own father, Otis Calloway, had walked her up that ridge the spring she married Harlan Vance, 1968, a deed folded in his coat pocket the whole way, and at the top of it, standing where you could see clear down into 3 counties, he'd told her the only thing he ever told her about money in his whole life. "Don't ever let a husband's name or a son's hurry sign for what's already yours," he'd said. She was 20 years old. She hadn't understood it then. She understood it a great deal better at 78, on her knees on a pantry floor, dating jars of chow-chow while her son's movers carried her life out the door in boxes marked Kitchen and Misk. The Springhouse itself sat 40 yards off the back porch, half sunk into the hillside, stone walls green with moss, a plank door that hadn't opened easy in years. Everybody in the family called it the Springhouse, because that's what it had been once, before the well got dug. Nobody had used it to cool milk since Eisenhower. Wade had walked past it 1,000 times and seen nothing but a shed too far gone to bother tearing down. The realtor's photos didn't even show it. Bear Claw's survey crew hadn't set foot near it yet. There was a second door inside that one. Ruth was the only living person who knew that. By the time the state van came for her, the movers had the truck 3/4 full, and Wade was standing in the yard with the clipboard tucked under his arm like a man who'd finished a job well done. "You'll like it there, Mama," he said. "They've got a dining room. Bingo on Thursdays. Denise's aunt was there 2 years. She said the staff were real nice to her. Was she in a home because her son sold her house out from under her? Ruth asked. Or because she couldn't manage on her own anymore? Wade's jaw tightened. That's not fair. No, Ruth said. It isn't. She let the van driver help her up the step, a young man, polite, who told her his name was Marcus and asked if she wanted the window seat. She said she did. She held her handbag in her lap, and inside it, folded into a church bulletin from 3 Sundays back where nobody would think to look, was a single sheet torn from a legal pad, in her own handwriting, dated the week Wade first said the word "sell" out loud at Sunday dinner. It wasn't the deed. The deed was still exactly where it had been for 57 years. It was just a note to herself. 3 lines, the kind of thing a woman writes down so she won't forget she already decided something. The van pulled out of the gravel drive at 11 in the morning. Ruth did not look back at the house. She looked at the ridge instead, at the tree line above the spring house roof, green and quiet and completely unbothered by anything that had happened that day, and she kept looking at it until the road bent and it was gone. Sunset Manor smelled like carpet cleaner and canned green beans. A woman at the front desk had Ruth sign 3 more forms, and a nurse named Patty walked her down a hallway painted the color of weak coffee to a room with 2 beds, 1 empty, and told her lunch was at noon and she'd get used to the schedule. Everybody does, Patty said, kind about it. Takes about 2 weeks. Ruth set her suitcase on the bed and did not unpack it that first day. She sat by the window instead, which looked out on a parking lot, and past that, a stand of sycamores, and she thought about her jars, whether Wade had thought to keep any of them or whether they'd gone in a box marked for the church rummage sale, along with everything else that didn't fit the new owner's taste. She did not think about the money. $89,000 split between a lake house down payment and a truck loan meant nothing to her, one way or the other. She thought about the ridge. She thought about her father's voice, 43 years gone now, and still clear as the day he said it. And she said nothing to Patty, or to the intake coordinator, or to Wade when he called that evening to ask if she'd settled in fine, about a door behind a door, 40 yards off a back porch that wasn't hers anymore. Travis Boone drove up Larkspur Creek Road for the first time on a Tuesday in March in a truck 10 years older than the one Wade had just bought with his mother's farm money, and he liked what he saw before he'd even parked. 42 years old, divorced, tired of renting a duplex in Somerset, he had scraped together every dollar he had, taken out every loan a bank in this county would give a man with his credit, and put down $67,000 of the $89,000 on a farm he intended to actually work, not flip, not develop, just work. The way his own grandfather had worked 40 acres in Wayne County until the day he died on it. Bear Claw Aggregates had wanted the whole parcel and offered more. Travis never knew that. The listing agent never mentioned a mineral survey, a pending inquiry, or a company letterhead from 4 months earlier sitting in a drawer at the county courthouse. Travis just saw good bottomland, a sound barn, and a house that needed paint but not bones, and he signed his own name to his own clipboard 3 weeks after Ruth Vance signed hers. He spent his first 2 months clearing what the last family had let go to seed, brush hogging the near pasture, patching the barn roof, and working his way, plot by plot, toward the back of the property, where a stone shed sat half swallowed by hillside, moss thick as carpet on its roof. He figured it for a root cellar at first, then a smokehouse. He pried the outer door open on a Saturday afternoon in April, expecting spiders and empty shelving, and found instead, past a collapsed set of wooden racks gone soft with rot, a second door set into the back wall of the spring house, narrower than the first, bound with a hasp, gone to solid rust. He stood there a minute with his flashlight, looking at it. Nobody built a locked door inside a spring house for no reason. Travis set his flashlight down on a shelf and got both hands on the hasp. It didn't move. He went back to the truck for a hammer and a flat bar, and when he came back, the light through the outer door had shifted, thin and gray, dust hanging in it like it had nowhere better to be. He worked the bar under the hasp and leaned his weight on it. The metal screamed once, then gave, rust flaking off in a sheet, and the door swung in on hinges that hadn't turned since before he was born. Inside was smaller than the spring house itself, a stone box built into the hill, maybe 4 feet deep, cool even in April, the kind of cool that had nothing to do with weather, On the floor, wrapped in a feed sack gone stiff with age, sat a tin document box. Travis crouched and pulled it out into the light. The sack crumbled a little at the corners when he moved it. He set it on the spring house floor and looked at it a minute before he touched the latch. "Somebody didn't want this found," he said out loud, to nobody. The latch was simpler than the hasp. It clicked open easy, like it had been oiled more recently than everything else in that shed. Inside, folded flat, were papers, old ones. A rubber band around them had gone brittle and snapped the second he touched it, crumbling into little black threads across his palm. He unfolded the top sheet careful, the way you'd handle something that might not survive a second folding. It was a deed. He could tell that much. He'd signed enough paperwork of his own 2 months back to know what a deed looked like, the language of it, the legal size paper, the notary block down in the corner with a raised stamp pressed into it. What he couldn't tell was whose name was on it, because the ink had gone brown and thin with age, and reading old handwriting wasn't a skill Travis Boone had ever needed before. He carried the box up to the house like it was something alive. He set it on his kitchen table, under the good light, and sat down across from it with a cup of coffee he didn't drink, and he read it 3 times before he gave up trying to make full sense of the names. One name he could read plain enough because it repeated. Calloway, not Vance. Calloway. He knew the farm had belonged to a family named Vance. The realtor had said so. The paperwork he'd signed said so. Nowhere in any of it had the name Calloway come up once. He called his sister that night because she was the only person he trusted to tell him he wasn't losing his mind. "You found a deed in a spring house," she said. "In a wall inside the spring house, behind a second door." Travis. "I'm not making this up, Carla. I didn't say you were making it up. I said Travis. Like, what in the world? There's a name on it. Calloway. Farm's supposed to be Vance land. Could be an old family thing. In-laws. Somebody's grandma." "Could be," Travis said. "Paper looks like it's from the 60s. You gonna do anything about it?" He looked at the deed again. At the stamp in the corner, a raised seal he couldn't make out clean enough to read the name on it either. "I don't know yet," he said. "Feels like the kind of thing you don't just throw away." He didn't sleep much that night. He kept the tin box on the kitchen table instead of putting it away, like putting it away would be deciding something he wasn't ready to decide. In the morning, he drove into Persimmon Fork proper, 4 miles down Route 9, to the hardware store, because Merle Skidmore had run that store since Travis was in diapers, and Merle knew everybody in the hollow, living or dead. "Got a question that's not about lumber," Travis said, setting a folder on the counter. He'd copied the deed page at the library the day before, careful with it, not trusting the original out of the house. Merle put his readers on and looked it over slow. "Where'd you get this?" "Spring house. Behind a second door I didn't know was there." Merle whistled low. "That's the old Calloway parcel. Ridgeland. Otis Calloway's people way back. Calloway. Not Vance. Vance is married into the Calloways, way I remember it. Harlan Vance married Otis's girl. Ruth, I believe her name was." Merle tapped the paper. "You want to know about deeds from back then, you don't want me. You want Hollis Pruitt." "Who's that?" "Ran the county recorder's office for near 40 years. Retired now, but that man remembers every deed that ever crossed his desk like it was his own name. Lives out past the Baptist church, little brick house with the flagpole." Travis thanked him and drove there directly, the folder on the passenger seat like it might slide off if he took a curve too fast. Hollis Pruitt was 81 years old, thin as a fence post, and sitting on his porch when Travis pulled in like he'd been waiting on somebody all morning, even though he hadn't known who. "You're the fella bought the old Vance place," Hollis said before Travis had his door shut. "Yes, sir. Travis Boone. Heard about it at church. Heard you paid a fair price, too, which is more than most folks get these days." Hollis squinted at the folder under Travis's arm. "What did you bring me?" Travis handed it over without a word. Hollis unfolded it, and something in his face changed before he'd even read the first line all the way through. He looked up over his glasses. Where was this? Spring house. Second door, hidden in the back wall. "Lord," Hollis said, quiet. "You know it? I filed the original of this myself. 1968. I was 23 years old, working my second year in that recorder's office, and Otis Calloway walked in with his daughter in this exact deed, 40 acres of ridgeland, and he had me stamp it and file it same day he give it to her." "Give it to who?" "His daughter, Ruth." Hollis tapped the page. "Ruth Calloway. Vance now, I expect, after she married. That's her father's notary stamp right there, plain as anything. Otis did his own notarizing back then. Half the county did. Travis felt something drop in his stomach, slow, like a stone going down a well. The woman who owned the farm before me, he said. Old woman. They said her son sold it. Put her in a home somewhere. That'd be Ruth, Hollis said. I heard about that too. Whole Hollow heard about it. Didn't sit right with anybody. Way that boy handled it. If this deed's real, Travis said, and this ridge was hers separate from the farm, then whoever sold you that ridge, Hollis said, didn't have the right to sell it. Not without her signing off on it herself, and this paper says it was never in her husband's name, never in her son's name, never anybody's but hers, straight from her daddy. Travis sat down on the porch step without being asked, because his legs wanted him to. I bought that ridge, he said. Paid for 40 acres I might not own. You paid for what the deed said you were buying, Hollis said. Questions whether the deed said it right. He folded the copy back up, careful. I'd want to see the original before I said anything for certain, but if it's stamped the way this copy shows, and if it's filed the way I remember filing it. He stopped and looked out at the road a second. Where's Ruth at now? He asked. Sunset Manor, I heard. Over in Somerset. And Hollis stood up slower than he sat down, reaching for a cane hooked on the porch rail. Get your truck, he said. We're going to go see her. Travis blinked. Right now, son, I am 81 years old. I don't put things off I can do today, because I've buried enough friends to know today's the only day anybody's promised. He was already down the steps. Bring that folder. And whatever original you got, don't leave it setting on your kitchen table. Bring that too. Travis went back for the tin box, wrapped it in a towel this time, and set it on the floorboard of his truck like it might bruise. The drive to Somerset took 40 minutes. Hollis quiet most of the way, looking out the window at fields he'd probably watched change hands 3 or 4 times over in his life. Otis Calloway was a careful man, Hollis said, somewhere past the county line. Told me once, filing that deed, that he didn't trust a man's word no further than paper would carry it. Even his own son-in-law's word. Even his own grandson's, and that boy wasn't even born yet. He shook his head. Guess he saw something coming a long way off. Sunset Manor's parking lot was half full when they pulled in, a low brick building with a sign out front advertising a spring craft fair, laminated and a little sun-faded. Travis carried the box in himself. Hollis carried the folder. The woman at the front desk looked up and asked could she help them, and Hollis said, plain as anything, that they were there to see Ruth Vance, and it was important, and it couldn't wait for visiting hours to start proper. She must have heard something in his voice because she didn't argue. She picked up a phone and said a room number, and a minute later a nurse came to walk them back, down a hallway the color of weak coffee, past a dining room set up for lunch nobody had eaten yet. Ruth was sitting by her window when they came in, hands folded in her lap, and she looked up at 2 men she didn't know, one old enough to be her own generation, one younger, carrying something wrapped in a towel like it was fragile. Mrs. Vance? Hollis said, taking his hat off though he wasn't wearing one, an old habit his hands remembered on their own. My name's Hollis Pruitt. I don't guess you remember me. Ruth looked at him a long moment, and something crossed her face that wasn't quite recognition yet, more like the beginning of it. I do, though, she said slowly. You filed my daddy's papers. 1968. Yes, ma'am. Her eyes moved to the towel in Travis's arms, to the shape of it, the corner of tin showing through where the cloth had slipped. She didn't ask what it was. She already knew. Travis set the box on the little table by her chair, towel and all. He peeled the cloth back slow. Ruth looked at the tin a long moment before she touched it. That was in the spring house, she said. It wasn't a question. Behind a second door, Travis said. I didn't even know it was there till I pried the outer one open. Rust on the hasp. Yes, ma'am. Had to bar it loose. Ruth's hand went to the lid on its own, like it remembered the motion better than her mind did. She lifted it. The papers inside had gone soft at the edges, brown along every fold, but she knew the top sheet before she'd unfolded it all the way. My daddy's stamp, she said, right there in the corner. Hollis leaned in. I filed that one myself, Mrs. Vance. 1968. I remember the day, Ruth said. Hot. Daddy wore his church suit to the courthouse because he said a deed deserved a suit. She smoothed the paper flat against her knee. He told me something that day. I never forgot it. Travis waited. Hollis waited too, hat still off, still in his hands. He said, "Don't ever let a husband's name or a son's hurry sign for what's already yours." Ruth's voice didn't shake saying it. It came out even like she'd been holding the sentence ready for years, waiting on somebody to ask. I didn't understand him then. I understood him about 40 years later. Nobody spoke for a second. Down the hall, a cart rattled past, dishes clinking. Wade sold that ridge, Travis said, along with everything else, $89,000 for the whole parcel. He never asked me was it his to sell, Ruth said. I never told him it wasn't. Figured a man in that big a hurry wasn't going to slow down and read a deed close, even if I'd put it in his hand. Hollis sat down across from her, easing into a chair like his knees had opinions about it. Mrs. Vance, I need to ask you something, and I need you to think hard before you answer it. Did you ever record this deed yourself, after your daddy filed it originally? It was recorded, Ruth said. You said so yourself just now. I said I filed the original in '68. Question is whether it stayed on the county rolls plain or whether it got folded into the farm's parcel number somewhere down the line. Sometimes a clerk combines two adjoining tracts under one tax bill if nobody flags it separate. Saves paperwork. Happens more than you'd think, especially with family land. Ruth's face went still. I don't know, she said. Daddy handled all that. After he passed, Harlan handled the taxes. I never once looked at a tax bill in 40 years of marriage. That's not a fault in you, Hollis said, gentle. That's just how it was done back then. But it means I can't tell you sitting in this room whether the county's got that ridge listed under your name or under the farm's. I need to go look at the ledger myself. When? Travis asked. Tomorrow. Recorder's office opens at 8. Hollis looked at Ruth. You want to come with us? It's your name on the paper. Might carry weight you standing there? Ruth looked down at her hands, folded again the way they'd been when the men walked in. They don't let me leave without somebody signing me out, she said. There's a form for that too. Everything in this place has a form. I'll sign it, Travis said, before he'd thought all the way through what he was offering. I'm not kin, but I own the farm your name's on half of. That ought to count for something, Hollis almost smiled. It'll count for something with me. County might want a family member. There's family, Ruth said, and something in her voice went flat when she said it. There's just not any I'd ask. She didn't explain further, and neither man pushed her on it. Travis wrapped the box back in the towel, but this time he left it on the table by her bed instead of carrying it out. It's yours, he said. Found on your land, in a door your daddy built. I don't want it in my truck. Ruth looked at the box a moment, then at him. You could have kept quiet about this, she said. Wasn't anybody going to know but you? I thought about it, Travis admitted. About an hour, maybe. Then I thought about my own daddy's 40 acres in Wayne County and how I'd feel if somebody found a paper proving half of it was never rightly sold and just closed the box back up. He shook his head. Didn't feel like a thing a man could live with. Hollis stood, knees cracking audible, in the quiet room. 8 o'clock, he said. I'll meet you both at the courthouse steps. Ruth was already dressed and sitting in the lobby chair when Travis pulled up the next morning, 20 minutes early, coat buttoned, a scarf tied at her throat like she was going to church. She had the tin box in her lap, towel and all, both arms around it. You didn't have to bring it, Travis said, opening the truck door for her. I wasn't leaving it in a room with somebody else's key, Ruth said. The Persimmon Fork Courthouse sat 2 blocks off Main, brick gone the color of an old penny, a Civil War cannon rusting quiet on the lawn out front. Hollis was already on the steps, cane in one hand, a thin folder of his own tucked under the other arm. Got here at 7:30, he said. Wanted first crack at the ledger before the morning rush. He held the folder up. Wasn't rushing for nothing. Inside, the recorder's office smelled like toner and old paper, a long counter dividing the public from rows of steel shelving stacked floor to ceiling with bound volumes. A woman behind the counter, younger than Travis, name tag reading Donna, looked up when Hollis walked in like she'd been expecting royalty. Mr. Pruitt, she said. You're back early. Brought reinforcements, Hollis said. He set his folder on the counter. Donna, pull the current parcel record for the old Vance farm, would you? Larkspur Creek Road. Donna's fingers moved over a keyboard, screen glowing pale blue against her face. Got it. 42 acres total, sold March of this year to a Travis Boone. That's me, Travis said. Now pull the historical, Hollis said. Go back before the county went digital. 1968 forward. Donna disappeared into the shelves and came back 5 minutes later with a bound ledger the size of a phone book, dust on its spine. She laid it open on the counter, careful, and turned pages slow until Hollis put a finger down on one. There, he said. Book 14, page 206. Otis Calloway to Ruth Ann Calloway, 40 acres, ridge parcel, filed and recorded September the 4th, 1968. He looked up. Separate parcel number. Never merged with the farm's number, near as I can tell here. That's good news, Mrs. Vance. That's real good news. Ruth let a breath out she must have been holding since the truck. But look here, Hollis said, and his voice changed, dropped a register, the way a man's voice does when he's found something he didn't expect to find. He turned 2 more pages to a section of looser inserts, correspondence filed alongside the deed record the way old courthouses sometimes did before everything got its own drawer. This wasn't in the main ledger. This was tucked in behind it. He pulled out a single typed letter, county letterhead gone yellow, and Donna leaned in to read it too. That's an inquiry, Donna said, surprised. Mineral rights inquiry. Company name's right there. Bear Claw Aggregates, Hollis read aloud. Dated this past November, 4 months before the farm sale closed. He looked up at Travis, then at Ruth. They wrote the county asking about lease terms on the Calloway Ridge parcel specifically, by its separate number, not the farm's number. Asking was it available, was there a recorded owner, could they be put in contact? The room went quiet enough Travis could hear the clock on the wall ticking. They knew, Ruth said, slow, like she was working the sentence out as she said it. They knew that Ridge was worth something, before Wade ever sold a single acre. Looks that way, Hollis said. And nobody at that company ever told your son a thing about it when they bought his $89,000 farm 3 months later. Bought the whole parcel low, knowing exactly what sat on the back 40. Why would the county have this and not tell anybody? Travis asked. Because inquiries aren't public record unless somebody asks to see them, Donna said. This letter just sat here waiting on the right person to come looking. Most folks never do. Hollis set the letter down next to the old deed, side by side on the counter, 60 years apart and pointing at the same 40 acres. Companies had their eye on that ridge a while, Hollis said. Question is how much they're willing to pay to lease it, now that it's got a name attached instead of a blank space on a map. I don't want to lease anybody anything yet, Ruth said. I want this deed recorded plain, under my name today, before one more day goes by that somebody else can argue about it. That's exactly what we're here to do, Hollis said. He turned to Donna. Can you process an original deed for record today? 1968 instrument, never properly indexed separate in the modern system. I can flag it for the recorder to review this afternoon, Donna said. Long as the original's got a valid notary and it matches the historical ledger entry, which, she tapped the open book. It does, word for word. Ruth pushed the tin box across the counter herself, both hands, like she was done carrying it alone. Then, let's get it done, she said. 40 acres. My daddy's name and mine, nobody else's. Donna took the box careful, the way Travis had carried it into Sunset Manor the day before, like it might still bruise. I'll need you to fill out a form, she said, and something in her face said she knew exactly how that sentence sounded, coming right after everything Ruth had already signed that year without asking a single question. Ruth almost laughed. It came out short, but it was real. I've signed my whole life away on forms this year, she said. One more won't kill me. Long as this one's got my name on the right line. Donna slid a fresh form across the counter and pointed to a line marked applicant signature. Ruth signed it slow, pressing hard enough the pen nearly tore the paper. There's a filing fee, Donna said, $17. Travis had his wallet out before Ruth could reach for her purse. I've got it, he said. Call it rent on 40 acres I didn't actually buy. Donna smiled a little at that, took the bill, and stamped the deed with a date seal, hard, the way a woman stamps something she means to matter. She carried the original back to the recorder's desk herself and came back a few minutes later with a certified copy, still warm from the copier. It's official, she said. Book 218, page 4. Calloway Ridge parcel, recorded in the name of Ruth Ann Vance, effective today. Ruth held the copy with both hands like she had the tin box the day before. 40 acres, she said. Not much to some folks. Everything to me. Hollis wasn't finished. He'd gone back to the loose folder of correspondence, the one where he'd found the mineral rights letter, and he was thumbing through it again, slower this time, reading dates instead of skimming them. Donna, he said, you keep the follow-ups filed with the inquiry or separate? Same folder usually. Nobody ever asks for them, so nobody's bothered sorting. Hollis pulled another sheet loose, and this one made him go quiet a long moment before he said anything. Travis watched his face change, the same way it had changed reading the first letter. What is it? Ruth asked. Hollis didn't answer right away. He read it twice, lips moving faintly on the second pass, an old habit of a man who'd read thousands of deeds in his life and trusted his own eyes more than his memory. It's a follow-up letter, he said finally. December, same year, same company. Internal estimate attached for their own planning. Not meant for public eyes, but it landed in the county file same as the first one, because somebody in this office CCC'd the wrong desk. He looked up at Ruth. They ran numbers on that ridge, assuming a 40-acre lease, aggregate rights, 10-year term. And, Travis said. Hollis set the letter on the counter, turned it so Ruth could see the number circled near the bottom, in pencil, somebody's careful hand. $740,000, he read aloud, over the life of the lease. Nobody in the room said anything for a second. Donna's mouth came open like she meant to speak and then didn't. Ruth just looked at the number, like it belonged to somebody else's life. Wade sold the whole farm for $89,000, Ruth said, slow. And the ridge alone was worth 8 times that, Hollis said, to the very company that bought it. They knew, Ruth said again, the words she'd said back at the counter the first time, except now she said them with a number attached, and the number made it a different kind of knowing. They knew exactly what they were buying and what it was worth, and they let my son sign it away for pocket change. Company men don't call it pocket change, Hollis said. They call it a good deal. Just depends which side of the table you're sitting on. Donna cleared her throat. I've got to tell you both something, and it's not going to be comfortable. She pulled the new file up on her screen. State requires notice of a corrected recording go out to any parties shown on the prior instrument. That means Mr. Boone, since he's current owner of record on the merged parcel. She glanced at Travis. And it means Wade Vance, too, since he's listed as grantor on the March sale. He's going to find out today, Travis said. Could be today. Could be tomorrow when the letter goes out. Small county, though. Donna shrugged, like she'd seen this play out before. Word usually beats the mail. Ruth folded her copy of the deed careful along its crease and slid it into her purse. Let him find out, she said. I'm done hiding a piece of paper in a spring house. It did its job 40 years just laying there quiet. It can do its next job out loud. They were still standing at the counter when the courthouse door opened hard enough to bang the wall, and Wade Vance came through it in his work boots, cap still on, face red in a way that wasn't sunburn. Mama, he said, and his voice carried across the whole room. What in the hell did you do? Language, Donna said, sharp, before Ruth could answer. This is a county office. Wade didn't look at Donna. He was looking at his mother, and then at Hollis, and then at Travis, working out in real time who belonged to which side of whatever had just happened to him. I got a call, Wade said, from a fella at Bear Claw, wanting to know why the county's got a new deed on file splitting my ridge parcel off the farm sale. He took his cap off, put it back on, a man with nowhere to put his hands. Splitting it right out from under the deal I already closed. It was never yours to close, Wade, Ruth said. Her voice didn't rise to meet his. It stayed low and even, the way it had in the recorder's office minutes before. That ridge was mine, recorded in my name in 1968, before you were even born. That's not what the power of attorney says. Power of attorney lets you sign for what's mine to sign away, Ruth said. It doesn't make something mine that was already somebody else's before you ever held the paper. Wade turned to Hollis like an old man might side with him out of some loyalty Wade imagined he was owed. You did the filing way back. You're telling me this is real? I filed it myself, Hollis said. September of '68. Your grandfather's stamp is on it, plain as day. I don't guess a man forgets a thing like that, even at my age. Then why didn't anybody tell me? Wade said, and there was something underneath the anger now, something closer to panic. I put $12,000 down on a house at the lake. I told Denise the rest was clearing my truck loan by June. $18,000 I still owe on that truck, and I already spent. Nobody told you, Ruth said, because you never asked me a single question before you put me in that home and put a for sale sign at the end of my own driveway. She said it plain, no heat in it, which somehow landed harder than shouting would have. You had a clipboard in your hand and a truck backed up to my porch, and you told me sign here, they're waiting. You didn't ask was there anything I needed to tell you first. You didn't ask was there anything on that land that wasn't yours to sell. Wade's jaw worked like he was chewing on something he didn't want to swallow. I was trying to take care of things, he said. You couldn't manage that place anymore, Mama. Somebody had to decide. Somebody did decide, Ruth said. My daddy decided, 60 years ago, exactly what would happen if a husband's name or a son's hurry ever tried to sign for what was mine. She reached into her purse and laid the certified copy on the counter, so it sat between them, closer to Wade than to her. He decided it before you were a thought in anybody's head, Wade. That's not spite. That's just how long some things have been settled. Donna, behind the counter, had gone very still, the way a person does when they realize they're standing inside a family's whole history and can't get out of the room without walking through the rest of it. Wade looked at the paper a long moment. Then he looked at Travis. You knew, he said. You had to know standing here. I found the box in the spring house, Travis said. Week after I moved in. Brought it straight to Hollis. Didn't sit on it. Didn't shop it around. Brought it to your mother next day. You could have brought it to me, Wade said. I'm the one sold you the land. You sold me land that wasn't all yours to sell, Travis said. No anger in it. Just fact. Laid down plain the way Hollis had laid down the ledger page. I didn't think that was a thing to bring to you first. Wade turned back to his mother, and for a second something moved across his face that might have been closer to shame than anger, though it didn't stay there long. Bear Claw's already got a crew scheduled, he said. Surveyors out there this week, staking the ridge for the aggregate access road. They think they own it clean. Hollis's eyebrows went up at that. This week, he said. You're sure? Fella on the phone said Thursday, said they wanted stakes in before the weather turned. Ruth's hand went still on the counter. Thursday. 2 days. Then we've got 2 days, Hollis said, to make sure whoever's holding those stakes knows exactly which 40 acres they don't own anymore. Wade didn't wait around for the rest of it. He put his cap on backward for a second, took it off, jammed it on right, and walked out the same door he'd banged open, letting it swing shut soft this time instead of hard. He's going to call them, Hollis said, watching through the glass. Try to talk his way out of a mess he built himself. Let him call, Ruth said. Calling won't unstamp that deed. They stepped out onto the courthouse steps a few minutes later, Ruth holding her certified copy against her chest like a school book. The cannon on the lawn sat quiet in the noon sun. Travis figured they'd head to the truck. Instead, a black SUV pulled in fast at the curb, tires chirping soft on old asphalt. A man got out in a collared shirt, no tie, boots too clean for a man who claimed to work land. He had a folder under one arm, same as Hollis, except his looked new, corner sharp. Mrs. Vance, he said. Garrett Sloan, Bear Claw Aggregates, Regional Land Office. He held out a hand. Ruth didn't take it. You got here fast, Hollis said. For a man who claims his company just heard about this an hour ago. Sloan smiled like that didn't land. Small county, he said. Word moves quick out here. I was in Somerset already, matter of fact. Heard there was some question on the Vance parcel and figured I'd drive over, save everybody a headache. Ain't a question, Ruth said. It's recorded. Book 218, page 4. I understand there's a new filing, Sloan said. I just hate for this to turn into something drawn out. Lawyers, hearings. That eats up years sometimes. He opened his folder, held out a single sheet. Companies prepared to offer a lease today. Straight cash, no waiting on courts. $150,000, paid within the month. Travis watched Ruth's face. It didn't move much. 150, she said. That's a fair number for 40 acres of ridge rock, Mrs. Vance. More than fair. Hollis let out a short laugh. No humor in it. Funny, he said. Your own company ran an internal estimate back in December. $740,000 over a 10-year lease. That number's sitting in a county file not 30 feet from where we're standing. Sloan's smile stayed put, but something behind his eyes went still. I don't know what estimate you're referring to, he said. Sure you do, Hollis said. Your company wrote the county in November, asking about lease terms on this exact parcel by its separate number. Before the farm ever sold, you knew what sat on that ridge before Wade Vance's boots hit the closing table. That inquiry was routine, Sloan said. Companies check on mineral rights all over this county. Doesn't mean anything. It means you knew, Ruth said. Plain, no heat in it. You knew, and you bought the whole farm cheap off a man in a hurry, hoping nobody ever found the piece of paper that says the ridge wasn't his to sell. Sloan folded his hands over the folder. Mrs. Vance, I want to be fair here. We can make this easy or we can make it slow. I've had slow, Ruth said. Slow was a nursing home bed for 4 months while my farm got sold out from under me. This ain't slow. This is Tuesday. Travis had to look down at his boots to keep from grinning. Company surveyor is out there Thursday, Sloan said, staking the access road regardless of what papers filed today. We've got permits moving. I'd rather not have a confrontation on site. Then don't send anybody, Hollis said. Ridge parcel's not yours to survey. Never was. We bought that land in good faith, Sloan said. You bought it knowing exactly what it was worth and telling the seller nothing, Hollis said. That's not good faith. County'll have plenty to say about that too, I expect, once this gets in front of the right desk. Sloan looked at Ruth a long moment, like he was recalculating something behind his eyes. 180, he said. Final offer for today only. You're not talking to somebody who needs today, Ruth said. I've waited 60 years on this piece of paper. I can wait on you too. Sloan closed his folder slow, the sharp corners not looking so sharp anymore. Thursday, he said. Crew's already scheduled. I'd hate for anybody out there to get confused about boundary lines. They won't be confused, Hollis said. We'll make sure of that. Sloan got back in his SUV without another word, and it pulled off the curb faster than it needed to, gravel spitting off the tire on the turn out of the lot. Ruth watched it go. That's the fella been sitting on $740,000 of my daddy's ridge, she said. Driving a nicer truck than my son ever will. He'll be back, Hollis said. Men like that don't leave money on a table. They leave it and come back with somebody meaner. Let him, Ruth said. I got somebody meaner too. Just older. Hollis laughed at that, a real one this time, and it made his cane wobble a second before he caught himself on the rail. They walked to the truck together, Ruth's certified copy still pressed flat against her chest. Travis unlocked the passenger door for her, careful, the way he'd done every trip so far. We can't just wait on Thursday and hope it works out, Travis said. If that crew's out there staking rock that's yours, somebody needs to be standing there when they do it. I intend to be, Ruth said. You're still checked in at Sunset Manor, Hollis said. Legally, anyway. Might raise questions, you walking off the property whenever you please. I can walk off whenever I please, Ruth said. Nobody signed me into that place for the rest of my life. Wade signed a form saying I needed help managing things day to day. That's not the same as a jail sentence. No, Hollis said. It's not. But you'll want it done right, so nobody can say different later. I'll call the administrator myself this afternoon. Explain there's a legal matter needs your presence Thursday. Sunset Manor won't want to be the one standing between a woman and her own recorded property. And if they do stand in the way? Travis asked. Hollis looked at him like the answer was obvious. Then we bring a lawyer instead of a phone call, he said. I know one in London, Kentucky does elder law. Used to record deeds off his filing same as everybody else in this county. Woman's sharp as a tack and doesn't scare easy. Call her too, Ruth said. Might as well have everybody lined up before Thursday gets here. Travis started the truck, the engine turning over, slow in the heat. Through the windshield, he watched the courthouse lawn, the cannon, a couple of pigeons working the base of the war memorial like they owned the place. There's one more thing bothering me, Travis said, pulling out onto Main. Sloan knew to show up here inside the hour. Somebody told him fast. Wade, Hollis said. Told you he'd call. Maybe, Travis said. Or maybe Bearclaws had somebody watching this recorder's office a good while, waiting on that ridge parcel to show up separate. Man doesn't drive over from Somerset on a rumor. He drives over because somebody's been checking that database regular, same as Donna does for anybody with sense. Hollis went quiet a second, working that over. Wouldn't surprise me, he said. Be worth asking Donna, does she keep any kind of log on who pulls records on that parcel number? Company men leave a trail sometimes, even when they think they're careful. I'll ask her Thursday morning, Ruth said. Right now, I want to go back to Sunset Manor and pack a bag proper this time. If I'm walking out onto that ridge, I want my own boots on, not hospital slippers. Travis smiled at that, small, eyes on the road. Yes, ma'am, he said. They rode in quiet a while, the hollow opening up around them, ridge lines rolling green on both sides of Route 9, Larkspur Creek catching the sun where the road crossed it low. Travis thought about the spring house waiting back at the farm, door standing open on its broken hasp, a repair he hadn't gotten to yet. He thought maybe he ought to fix it proper before Thursday. Give the place a door worth locking again, now that what it had guarded had a name and a number, and a woman ready to stand on it. Hollis broke the quiet first. One thing you ought to know going into Thursday, he said, companies like Bearclaw don't send their landman alone twice. Next time, it won't be an offer. It'll be a lawyer of their own, telling you the deed's got some flaw nobody's found yet. They'll look hard for one. Let them look, Ruth said. My daddy didn't miss much. No, Hollis said. He surely didn't. Travis turned onto the gravel stretch toward Sunset Manor, dust rising soft behind the truck, and up ahead the building sat low and white against the hillside, same as it had the day he'd first driven Ruth there with a tin box on her lap instead of a suitcase. Ruth was down to her last dresser drawer at Sunset Manor when a woman in a cardigan knocked twice and let herself in anyway. Mrs. Vance. She held a clipboard like it was a badge. I'm Pam Ratliff, facility director. I understand you're planning to leave us this afternoon. I am, Ruth said, folding a blouse into the bag on her bed. Your son signed the admission paperwork, Pam said. Power of attorney, medical proxy, the whole packet. I can't just let a resident walk out the door without that paperwork changing hands first. Somebody call you already? Ruth asked. A gentleman named Hollis Pruitt, Pam said, about 20 minutes ago, said there was a legal matter needed your signature at the courthouse Thursday. There is. Pam looked at the clipboard like it might answer for her. He also said, your competency's never been questioned by any doctor here. Just your son's paperwork saying you needed help managing affairs. That's right. Then legally, Pam said, you can leave whenever you want. I just need you to sign a form saying you're leaving against the facility's advice since your son's the one who admitted you and he hasn't called to authorize it. He won't authorize it, Ruth said. He's the one I'm going to court about. Pam's pen stopped over the form. That's a new one, she said, and almost smiled. Sign here, Mrs. Vance, and here, and take my card. If anybody gives you trouble about coming back for your things later, you call me directly. Ruth signed both lines steady, no shake in her hand at all this time. She zipped the bag, and Pam carried it to the door for her without being asked. Travis was waiting by the truck when Ruth came out, sun low behind the ridge line, her bag already lighter than the one she'd carried in. Boots on, she said, holding up one foot. Told you I would. Yes, ma'am, you did, Travis said. They didn't get far. Denise Vance was standing at the end of the walkway before they reached the truck, arms crossed, purse held against her side like a shield. Ruth, Denise said, I need to talk to you. Then talk, Ruth said. Denise glanced at Travis, at Hollis leaning on his cane by the tailgate, like she'd hoped for a smaller audience. Wade's talked to a lawyer, she said. Bearclaw's lawyer, actually. Man named Preston Gable. He thinks there's a way to fix this without anybody losing the farm money. There's no fixing a deed that's already recorded, Hollis said. He's not talking about the deed, Denise said. He's talking about you, Ruth, whether you had the capacity to understand what you were doing, hiding that paper all those years and then pulling it out now, right when there's money on the table, whether somebody's been steering you. Her eyes went to Travis on that last part, quick and away again. Ruth's face didn't change much. Steering me toward what, she said. My own daddy's land? I'm just telling you what's coming, Denise said. Wade's filing something. Emergency petition, Gable called it, asking the court to put a guardian over your affairs. Says with everything that's happened, the confusion, moving into a home, now this ridge business, a judge ought to look close before anybody signs leases worth that kind of money. Confusion, Ruth repeated, like she was turning the word over to check it for rot. I signed a deed my daddy filed in 1968, Denise. I didn't imagine it. Hollis has got the ledger page to prove it. I know that, Denise said, quieter now. I believe you, for what it's worth. I'm just the one who has to watch Wade dig himself in deeper, and I'd rather warn you than let you get blindsided at a hearing. When's it filed? Hollis asked. Gable said he'd have papers in front of a judge by Friday, Denise said. Emergency hearing. Says the timing matters with the survey crew out at the Ridge Thursday. Wants a guardian in place before any lease gets signed, so it's the guardian doing the signing, not Ruth alone. Travis felt something go cold and simple in his chest, the kind of plain understanding that didn't need explaining twice. That's not about protecting her, he said. That's about controlling who signs the lease Bearclaw already wants. I didn't say it made sense, Denise said. I said it's coming. Ruth looked at her a long moment. Thank you for telling me, she said, and meant it plain, no bite in it. You didn't have to. No, Denise said. I didn't. She looked back once toward the parking lot, toward wherever Wade was waiting in the truck, and walked off without saying more. Hollis was already working his phone out of his shirt pocket before Denise reached her car. That call I owe Faye Combs just got a lot more urgent, he said. Elder law lawyer, Ruth said, from London. The same. She's handled 2 of these petitions this year alone, told me about them back when a neighbor of mine went through it. Family wanting a slice of an inheritance dresses it up as protecting mama. Judge sees through it sometimes. Sometimes he doesn't. What happens if he doesn't? Travis asked. Then the court appoints somebody to manage Ruth's affairs, Hollis said. Could be a stranger. Could take months to sort back out, even after the truth comes to light. Meantime, nobody signs any lease without that guardian's say-so. Bearclaw gets exactly what it wanted. A hand on the pen that isn't Ruth's. Ruth's jaw set in a way Travis was starting to recognize, the same look she'd had staring down Wade in the recorder's office. Call her, she said, tonight, if she'll take it. I want to know what a judge needs to hear from me before Friday, not after. Hollis dialed right there in the parking lot, phone against his ear, squinting against the evening sun. Travis and Ruth waited by the truck while it rang. Faye, Hollis said when it picked up. Hollis Pruitt. I need a favor and I need it fast. He walked a few steps off, voice dropping, and Travis caught only pieces of it. Guardianship, competency, recorded deed. A name, Wade Vance, said twice, once flat and once with an edge to it. When Hollis came back, his face had gone serious in a different way than before, less angry and more careful. She says the filing itself doesn't scare her, Hollis said. Judges see through these more than families think. What scares her is if Gable can find one doctor willing to say Ruth's memory's been slipping. One note in a file somewhere. Sunset Manor's admission paperwork maybe. Anything that makes a judge want to be cautious. There's nothing in my file says my memory's slipping, Ruth said. I signed myself out an hour ago on my own hand, clear as anything. I believe you, Hollis said. But Faye wants to see whatever paperwork Sunset Manor's got on you before Friday. Make sure there's nothing Gable can twist. And she wants somebody who's known you a long time, willing to stand up and say so, under oath if it comes to it. That'd be you, Ruth said. 40 years filing this county's deeds, Hollis said. I know your memory better than most, Ruth Vance. It's sharper than half the men I ever worked with. He almost smiled. I'll say so happily, and I'll bring the ledger page while I'm at it. Travis leaned against the truck bed, working it over. So we've got Thursday at the Ridge, he said, and Friday in front of a judge. 2 different fights, same 2 days. Same fight, really, Hollis said, just wearing 2 different hats. Bearclaw wants that Ridge staked regardless of what paper says. Wade wants a guardian in place, so whatever gets signed, it isn't Ruth's hand doing the signing. Both of it's the same thing dressed different. Somebody trying to get around a deed by getting around Ruth instead. Ruth was quiet a moment, looking off toward the ridge line, dark now against a sky gone the color of a bruise healing. My daddy didn't write that deed thinking about survey crews or judges, she said. He wrote it thinking about exactly this, a husband's name or a son's hurry trying to sign for what's already mine. He just didn't know it'd take 2 different kinds of paper to try it. 3, counting Sloane's lease offer, Hollis said. 3 then, Ruth said. None of them's worked yet. They got in the truck as the last light went out of the hollow, porch lights starting to come on down along Larkspur Creek Road one at a time, the way they had every evening of Ruth's whole life out here, same houses, same families, same creek running under the same low bridge. Travis pulled out onto the gravel, and nobody said much for a while, the day sitting heavy enough in the cab without more words added to it. There's something you ought to know before Thursday, Hollis said eventually, breaking the quiet. Faye mentioned one more thing. Said if Gable's smart, and he's expensive enough to be smart, he won't wait on Friday's hearing at all. He'll try to get an emergency order tomorrow. Something temporary, just enough to freeze things until the real hearing. Freeze what? Travis asked. Any transaction touching Ruth's property, Hollis said, including maybe whether she's even allowed to be standing on that ridge Thursday when the crew shows up. Ruth's hands tightened once on her purse, then went still again. Let him try, she said. I've been kept off that land once already by paperwork I never got to read before I signed it. I don't intend to let it happen twice. No, Hollis said. I don't expect you will. They rode the rest of the way to the farm without much more said, the truck's headlights catching the mailbox at the end of the drive, Vance still lettered on the side in paint gone soft with weather, waiting on somebody to decide whether that name still belonged there at all. Travis parked by the barn and cut the engine, but he didn't go in the house right off. He walked past the porch, past the old smokehouse, down to where the spring house sat half swallowed in blackberry cane. The outer door still hung open on its broken hasp, same as it had for weeks. He found a scrap of hinge strap in the truck bed, a handful of screws, an old hasp Otis Calloway himself might have bought from the same hardware store in Somerset 60 years back. Travis worked by flashlight, knees in the wet grass, tightening what needed tightening. You're going to get chiggers doing that in the dark, Ruth said from behind him. Wouldn't be the worst thing that's bit me this week, Travis said. Ruth laughed, short and real. She held the flashlight steady while he set the last screw. Door's not gonna hold back a quarry crew, she said. No, Travis said. But it'll hold something. Guess that matters to me right now. He swung it shut and it caught clean, no drag, no gap. Ruth ran her hand along the new hasp like she was checking a signature. Daddy would have liked that, she said. He couldn't stand a door that didn't shut right. Inside the house, Hollis had the kitchen phone pulled as far as the cord allowed, standing half in the doorway, half on the porch, catching what signal he could. Donna, he said, it's Hollis again. I need you to do something for me, and I need you to do it quiet. Travis came in through the back just as Hollis hung up. She's pulling the sign-in sheets, Hollis said. Everybody who's requested that parcel file the last 2 years. Recorder's office keeps a log. Has to now, state law. How long till she knows anything? Ruth asked. Said she'd call back inside the hour. They sat at the kitchen table, the same one that had held a tin box a few weeks back, and waited on a ringing phone like it was a verdict. It came in 35 minutes. Hollis picked up before the second ring. Donna. Yeah, go ahead. He listened a long moment, jaw working, eyes narrowing the way a man's do when a suspicion turns solid in his hand. Say that name again, he said. Spell it. He grabbed a pencil off the counter, wrote on the back of an envelope. Ruth leaned in to read it upside down. Bear Claw Aggregates, Hollis read aloud once he'd hung up. Requested a copy of the Ridge parcel file back in March, 8 months before Wade ever signed a thing. Ruth went still. March, she said. March, Hollis said. Same landman, Sloan. Signed the request log himself, plain as day. Travis felt his stomach turn over slow. So they knew, he said, before they ever made an offer on the farm. They knew that Ridge was worth something. They knew it was worth $740,000 in lease money, Hollis said, and they still let Wade sell them the whole parcel for $89,000. That's not bad luck, Ruth said. That's a man buying a house knowing there's gold under the porch and not saying a word to the folks selling it. Might be worse than that, Hollis said. Might be fraud, a lawyer would say. Buying land you know the value of from a seller you know don't know it. There's a word for that. Wade doesn't know it either, Travis said. He's out a lake house payment, same as anybody. Wade's a fool, Ruth said, and there wasn't much heat in it, just tired fact. Bear Claw's something worse. Bear Claw's careful. Hollis folded the envelope, the name Bear Claw Aggregates staring up in pencil. Faye needs to see this before Friday, he said. This isn't just about your competency anymore, Ruth. This is a company that sat on a fact worth $750,000 and let your own son sell it out from under you. Call her tonight, Ruth said. I already got her number pulled, Hollis said, and dialed again. Faye Combs picked up on the third ring, voice brisk even at that hour. Hollis laid it out fast. The March request, the landman's name in the log, the timeline lining up too neat to be anything but planned. That's good, Faye said. Loud enough Travis caught pieces of it leaning near the phone. That's real good, Hollis. Gable wants to argue Ruth doesn't understand what she's signing. Now we've got a company that understood exactly what it was buying and said nothing. Judge doesn't like that kind of quiet. When do you want it? Hollis asked. Tonight, if you can scan it, Faye said. I want it in Friday's filing. But Hollis, listen, something's changed on my end too. Hollis's face shifted, careful again. Go on. Gable filed early, Faye said. Emergency motion went in this afternoon. He's not waiting for Friday. There's a hearing set for tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock in front of Judge Pardue. He's asking for a temporary order tonight, effective the second it's signed. Wants Ruth barred from the Ridge property until the guardianship question's settled. Ruth heard that part herself, close enough to the phone. Tomorrow's Thursday, she said. It is, Faye said. Same morning your survey crew's supposed to show up and stake that ridge. Hollis's hand tightened on the receiver. That's not a coincidence. No, Faye said. That's a lawyer who knows exactly what he's doing. If Judge Pardue signs that temporary order before 9, Ruth can't set foot on the ridge when Bear Claw's crew arrives, deed or no deed. Can he do that? Travis asked, loud enough Faye caught it through the phone. Who's that? Faye asked. Travis Boone, Hollis said. Bought the farm off Wade. He's the one found the tin box. Mr. Boone, Faye said. A judge can sign a lot of things at 8 in the morning he'd think twice about at 8 at night. That's exactly why Gable's rushing it. He wants the order in hand before anybody's had coffee. Ruth took the phone from Hollis without asking, pressed it to her ear. Miss Combs, she said. This is Ruth Vance. Mrs. Vance, good to finally hear your voice. What do I need to do tonight? Ruth said. Not tomorrow? Tonight. There was a pause on the line, the sound of papers shifting. You need to be in that courtroom at 9 sharp, Faye said. Not represented by me sitting there talking about you. You, sitting in that chair, answering for yourself. Judges don't sign away a woman's rights easy when she's looking right back at them. I'll be there, Ruth said. There's one more thing, Faye said. Bring that deed, the recorded copy, not the original, and bring Hollis. I want him under oath before lunch, telling that judge exactly what a notary stamp from 1968 looks like, and why he'd stake 40 years of his own name on it being real. He'll be there, Ruth said, looking at Hollis, who nodded once, solid as the springhouse door Travis had just hung. Then I'll see you at 9, Faye said. Mrs. Vance. One more thing. Yes, don't let anybody talk you out of coming, not Wade. Not anybody wearing a cardigan and holding a clipboard. You show up under your own power, on your own 2 feet. That's worth more in front of a judge than any paper I could file. Ruth hung up the phone slow, set it back in its cradle like it might still be listening. Thursday's not about the Ridge anymore, she said. Thursday's about a courtroom first. Ridge crew's still coming, Hollis said. Same morning. Gable knows that too. He's not trying to stop the lease. He's trying to make sure it's a stranger's signature on it instead of yours. Travis stood, walked to the window, looked out toward the dark shape of the ridge against a sky gone starless with cloud. Then somebody needs to be up there when that crew shows, he said. Whether Ruth's in a courtroom or not. Somebody who knows what that deed says. That'd be me too, Hollis said. Can't exactly split myself in 2, though. No, Travis said, but you don't have to. I've read that deed twice now. I know what it says as good as anybody. Judge needs Ruth and needs you. Ridge just needs somebody willing to stand in the road. Ruth looked at him a long moment, something settling in her face that hadn't been there a minute before. You'd do that, she said. Stand out there alone against a company crew. Wouldn't be alone, Travis said. I'd have a copy of that deed in my hand. That's not nothing. Hollis allowed a small, tired smile. Otis Calloway would have liked you, he said. He always did say the right paper in the right hand was worth more than a shotgun. Let's hope it doesn't come to needing either, Ruth said, and for the first time all evening, there was something close to a laugh in it. Outside, the wind picked up along the ridgeline, moving through blackberry cane and rusted fence wire, past a springhouse door that finally shut the way it was built to. Morning was coming, whether anybody in that kitchen was ready for it or not, and it was bringing 2 rooms full of people who thought they already knew how Thursday would end. The kitchen smelled like coffee. Nobody had time to drink. Ruth stood at the counter in her good blue dress, the one she'd worn to Otis's funeral and precious few times since. Hollis wore a tie for the first time Travis had seen. 9 o'clock was coming whether the coffee got finished or not. "You've got the deed," Hollis said. "The recorded copy." "In my purse," Ruth said, "where it's staying till somebody with a robe asks to see it." Travis folded a second copy into his jacket pocket, the one he meant to carry up the ridge. "Y'all go on," he said. "I'll be at the Spring House by 7:30. Crew's not due till 8. "You call if anything moves faster than you like," Hollis said. "You do the same," Travis said. Hollis's truck pulled out first, gravel popping under the tires, taillights swinging onto Larkspur Creek Road toward town. Travis stood on the porch a minute after they'd gone, listening to the quiet, then walked down past the barn to where the ridge trail started, deed copy folded flat against his chest like something that might blow away. The Persimmon Fork Courthouse sat 2 blocks off Route 9, brick gone the color of an old penny, a bell tower nobody had rung in years. Ruth climbed the steps slow, one hand on the rail, Hollis a half step behind her, Faye Combs waiting at the top in a gray suit, with a folder under her arm thick enough to stop a door. "Mrs. Vance," Faye said, "you made it." "Told you I would," Ruth said. Inside, the courtroom smelled like floor wax and old paper. Judge Pardue was a heavy-set man with reading glasses pushed up on his forehead, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else at 9 in the morning. Gable sat at the other table, sharp suit, papers squared in front of him like a man setting a table for company he didn't like. "Case of Vance versus Vance," the clerk read. "Emergency petition for temporary guardianship." Gable stood first. "Your Honor, this is straightforward. Mrs. Vance is 78. She was admitted to a care facility 5 weeks ago. She's since signed herself out against staff advice, and she's now attempting to interfere with a land transaction her own son executed under valid power of attorney." "Valid," Faye said, not standing yet, letting the word sit a second before she rose. "That's the word doing all the work in that sentence, Your Honor." Judge Pardue looked over his glasses. "Go ahead, counselor." Faye stood, folder open. Mrs. Vance's father deeded her 40 acres of ridge land outright in 1968, recorded in this county's own book. That parcel was never her son's to sell. It wasn't part of the estate his power of attorney covered. "That deed surfaced conveniently," Gable said, after the sale had already closed. "It surfaced," Faye said, "because Mrs. Vance hid it from her son's hurry, same as her father told her to. That's not convenient. That's foresight." Judge Pardue held a hand up before Gable could answer. "I've read the filing. I've read the deed. What I want to know is why I'm hearing an emergency guardianship petition instead of a simple title dispute." Gable straightened his cuffs. "Because Mrs. Vance's memory has been called into question by her placement at Sunset Manor, Your Honor. And because—" "Called into question by who?" Ruth said. The room went quiet. Faye put a hand lightly on Ruth's arm, not to stop her, just steadying. "Mrs. Vance," Judge Pardue said, not unkind. "You'll get your turn." "I'd like it now," Ruth said. He almost smiled. "Go ahead." Ruth stood, smoothed the front of her dress, looked at Gable, and then at the judge like she was deciding which one deserved the better answer. "Nobody at Sunset Manor's ever written one word about my memory slipping. I signed myself out yesterday morning clear-headed on my own hand. I can tell you what my daddy said to me the year I married, word for word, same as I could tell it 40 years ago." She paused. "Can Wade tell you what he spent his half of that $89,000 on? Because I can. $12,000 down on a lake house he can't afford the rest of." A murmur went through the gallery. Wade wasn't there, but the number landed anyway. Judge Pardue looked to Hollis. "You're Mr. Pruitt, 40 years county recorder." Hollis stood. "Yes, sir. You'll testify to the deed's authenticity." "I filed enough of Otis Calloway's paperwork to know his hand blind," Hollis said. "That notary stamps his. I'd stake my name on it, and I've got a name in this county worth staking." Gable tried once more. "Your Honor, none of this addresses the timeline concerns." "It addresses them fine," Judge Pardue said. "I'm not signing a guardianship order on a woman who just quoted me her own bank account better than most attorneys I've had in this room." He took his glasses off entirely. "I want briefing on the recorded deed's effect on the sale, filed by end of day Friday from both sides. Guardianship petition is denied. Mrs. Vance retains full authority over her own affairs." Faye exhaled slow beside Ruth. That's the first hurdle, she said, quiet enough only Ruth caught it. There's a second one waiting on that ridge. I know, Ruth said, already reaching for her purse. Up on the ridge, the morning had gone from cool to warm faster than usual, dew burning off the blackberry cane in threads of steam. Travis stood near the spring house with the deed copy in his jacket, watching a white pickup and a flatbed with survey gear grind up the old logging track that passed for a road this far back. A man climbed down from the pickup, clipboard in hand, orange vest over a company polo. Bearclaw aggregate stitched small over the pocket. Morning, the man said. Denny Ashcraft. I'm running survey today. Travis Boone. I own this farm. Yes, sir, we've got that on file. We're just staking the ridge parcel today. 40 acres per the recorded sale. Denny consulted his clipboard. Shouldn't take past noon. That 40 acres isn't part of what got sold, Travis said. There's a deed says different. Recorded this morning, matter of fact, or about to be. Denny's brow went up, polite but unmoved. I just work off what my paperwork says, sir. Company sent me a parcel number and a boundary. I don't have authority to stop on somebody telling me there's a different deed. I'd need that from my office. Then call your office. I can do that. Denny didn't move to do it right away. But I've got a crew standing here on the clock, and unless somebody official tells me different, I've got instructions to start staking. I'm telling you different. I understand that, sir. I do. But you're not the county, and you're not a judge. Denny said it without heat, like a man reciting a rule he hadn't written and didn't love. Boys, let's get the transit set up on the east line. Two men in matching vests started unloading gear off the flatbed. Travis felt something tighten low in his chest, the deed copy suddenly feeling thinner than paper should feel. That was when a truck Travis knew came grinding up the track behind the survey crew's flatbed, dust rolling off the tires. Wade's truck. It stopped hard, and Wade climbed out looking like a man who hadn't slept, tie already loosened, though it wasn't 9 yet somewhere else. Travis, Wade said. I need to talk to whoever's running this. Denny Ashcraft, Denny said, sticking a hand out that Wade didn't take. You need to hold off, Wade said. I sold you a parcel I didn't have clear right to sell. I just found that out myself an hour ago. Denny's pen stopped over his clipboard. Sir, are you the seller of record? I'm the one signed the deed, Wade said. But there's a woman named Denise Marsh at the recorder's office, and she called me this morning to say there's an original 1968 deed putting this ridge in my mother's name outright, recorded before I ever touched a pen. I sold something that was never mine to sell. Travis watched Wade's face while he said it, looking for the con, the angle, and not finding one, just a man scared of what he'd already spent. I don't have any way to verify that on my end, Denny said. I've got a survey order from Bearclaw's land office. Unless somebody official calls it off, I've got to stake it. Then somebody official's coming, Wade said. My mother's got a lawyer working on it right now. Then I'd encourage that to happen quick, Denny said, not unkindly, and turned back to his crew. East line first, boys. Let's move. Travis stood between the spring house and the first stake going into the ground. Deed copy in his pocket, doing nothing yet but sit there, and looked at Wade like he was seeing him fresh for the first time since the day he'd bought the farm out from under a woman neither of them had asked enough questions about. You knew, Travis said, about the March inquiry. Bearclaw asking about this ridge before you ever sold it. Wade's jaw worked. I didn't know till this morning. I swear it. He looked out over the blackberry cane, the ridgeline beyond it catching full sun now. I thought I was doing something smart, getting rid of land nobody wanted anyway. Turns out I was the only one in the county who didn't know what it was worth. The first stake went into the ground with a soft thud, an orange ribbon fluttering off it in the morning breeze, and neither man said anything for a moment, watching it stand there like a small flag, planted on a hill that didn't belong to whoever had planted it. Denny's phone buzzed before the second stake went in. He stepped off to the side of the flatbed, boots crunching gravel, and put it to his ear. Ashcraft, he said. Yeah, we're on site. A pause. Seller's here saying there's a title problem. Some old deed. Another pause, longer. Copy, Denny said, and hung up. He turned back to Travis and Wade like nothing had happened. Boys, keep setting pins, he called to his crew. We're not stopping. What did they tell you? Wade asked. Told me to finish the line, Denny said. Told me corporate's already got a sublease drawn up on this ridge. Some outfit out of Bristol wants it for a crushed stone operation. They're supposed to sign papers next week. Travis felt his stomach drop a notch. Next week. That's what I heard, Denny said. My office wants boundary markers in the ground before that signing, cloud on title or not. Makes it easier to show the buyer something real instead of a line on a map. Wade's face had gone pale under the morning sun. They're trying to flip it before anybody can stop them. I don't know anything about flipping, Denny said. I know my instructions. Bearclaw's been sitting on this since March, Travis said. You knew the ridge was worth something back then. That's why you wanted it staked so bad, so fast. Denny shrugged, not unkind, just a man doing a job he didn't make up the rules for. I stake ridges for a living, Mr. Boone. I don't set the deals behind them. The second stake went into the dirt near the fence line, ribbon fluttering orange against the green. A third man walked the tape measure toward the spring house itself, close enough that Travis stepped in front of him before he thought about it. Not that direction, Travis said. Just running the boundary, sir. Run it around the spring house, not through it. The man looked at Denny, who nodded, and the tape shifted a few feet wide. Travis stood there anyway, close enough to touch the old stone wall, like his body alone could hold a line paper hadn't drawn yet. Wade pulled his phone out, thumb moving fast. I'm calling Denise Marsh again. Won't help, Travis said. She already told you what she knows. This isn't a recorder's office problem anymore. It's a courtroom problem. Then I'm calling the courtroom. You don't have a number for a courtroom, Wade. Wade stood there with the phone in his hand, looking suddenly like a man who'd run out of moves he understood. He'd spent his whole life signing things and calling people and expecting both to work. Neither one was working now. I never wanted it to go like this, he said, quieter, almost to himself. I know, Travis said. Doesn't change where the stakes are going in the ground. 20 miles away, on the courthouse steps, Ruth stood in the sun with Fay Combs' folder tucked under her own arm now, Hollis beside her, working his tie loose like it had done its job and could rest. Judge didn't sign the order, Ruth said, still turning the fact over like she didn't quite trust it yet. He didn't, Fay said. But Gable's not done. He'll refile something else by Monday, cleaner, meaner. Today bought you time. It didn't win the war. The ridge is the war, Hollis said. Fay's phone rang before she could answer. She looked at the screen, frowned, and answered anyway. Combs. She listened a long moment, her jaw tightening. When did that survey crew get there? Another pause. And when's the sublease signing? She looked up at Ruth while she listened, eyes sharp now. Understood. Thank you for calling. She lowered the phone slow. That was Denise Marsh, Fay said. She's been keeping an eye on the file since this morning, out of her own good sense. Bearclaw's got a sublease lined up with a Bristol company, signing set for next week. That's why they pushed the survey today instead of waiting on the courts. They knew what they had, Ruth said, all along. They knew in March, Fay said. Same as your son's finding out right now standing on that ridge. Wade's up there, Ruth said, not a question. Denise said there's a survey crew, and a man matching Wade's truck description showed up an hour ago, Fay said. I'd guess he went to stop it and found out he couldn't. Hollis was already moving toward his truck. Then we go now. Hollis, Fay said. The recorded deed's the only thing that stops men with stakes and a clipboard. You've got the county's copy? Filed it myself at 7 this morning, Hollis said. Book 214, page 89. I watched the clerk stamp it before I ever walked into that courtroom. Then that's what stops them, Fay said. Not a hearing, not a judge. A stamp in a book, and you standing there able to say what it means. Ruth was already at the truck door. I'm not waiting on a car full of talk, she said. Get in, both of you, or I'll walk it myself and let my legs do the arguing. Hollis almost smiled at that, the way a man smiles at something he's proud of and worried about at the same time. Get in, he said to Fay. You're coming too. Somebody's got to say the legal words when we get there, and it isn't going to be me. Fay climbed in the back of the extended cab, folder clutched to her chest like a shield. I've got depositions till 2, she said. This is worth missing them for. The truck pulled out of the courthouse lot fast enough gravel spun under the tires, turning onto Route 9 toward the long climb back to Larkspur Creek Road. Ruth sat up front, deed copy in her purse, watching the ridgeline come up green and far off through the windshield, closer with every mile. "Faster, Hollis," she said. "Quiet." "I'm going as fast as this truck's got in it," Hollis said. "Otis would have told me the same thing, sitting right where you're sitting." "He'd have told you to floor it," Ruth said. "He would have," Hollis said, and pushed the pedal down another notch. Back on the ridge, a fourth stake went into the ground, this one close enough to the old fence line that Travis could see the whole boundary starting to take shape. A rectangle of orange ribbon laid over land that wasn't bear claws to fence. "How many more?" Wade asked Denny, voice tight. "6, maybe 7, Denny said. "We'll have the whole 40 marked by early afternoon." "And if somebody shows up with a deed before then?" Denny looked at him steady. "Then I'd guess my office calls me off. Till they do, I've got a job to finish." Wade looked down the logging track, back toward the farmhouse and the road beyond it, like he half expected to see something coming and half didn't want to. Travis stood by the springhouse door, the one he'd hung himself just the night before, solid on its hinges now, and thought about a woman on her knees in a pantry lining up jars by month and year, keeping better records than anybody in this fight had bothered to ask her about. He thought about a tin box wrapped in feed sack cloth, and a rubber band gone brittle, and a deed that had waited 50 years in the dark for a morning exactly like this one. "She's coming," he said, mostly to himself. "Who?" Wade asked. "Your mother," Travis said. "I'd bet the whole ridge on it." Wade didn't answer that. He just looked down the track again, and this time he didn't look away. The truck came around the last bend in the logging road, doing more speed than the ruts wanted to allow, and Travis heard it before he saw it, gravel popping under the tires like small gunshots. Wade heard it too. He turned first. "That's Hollis's truck," he said. Travis stepped away from the springhouse. Denny's crew kept working, driving stake number 6 into soft dirt near the fence corner, ribbon fluttering orange in the breeze like nothing in the world was about to change. The truck stopped hard behind the flatbed. Hollis climbed out first, then Faye, then Ruth, moving slower than the other two but steady, a big envelope pressed against her chest like she meant to shield her own heart with it. "Mama," Wade said, and it came out smaller than he meant it to. Ruth didn't look at him yet. She looked at the ridge, at the stakes, at the orange ribbon strung between them like a fence built out of nothing. "Stop that," she said, not loud, loud enough. Denny straightened up from his transit, polite as ever. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to stay back from the survey line." "This is my land," Ruth said. "I don't need to stay back from my own land. I've got a parcel number that says otherwise. Your parcel number's wrong." Ruth held the envelope out toward him, not quite handing it over, just showing it existed. "This says different. Recorded this morning at the courthouse. Book 214, page 89. Denny glanced at Hollis instead of the envelope, the way a man looks for the person who'll actually explain something. "And you are?" "Hollis Pruitt. County recorder for this district, 41 years, retired 2 years back." Hollis said it plain, no heat in it, like reciting his own address. "I filed that deed myself this morning. I watched the clerk stamp it. I don't have authority to stop a survey on somebody's say-so, sir, even a recorder's. Then here's the say-so." Hollis pulled a folded copy from his jacket and held it out. "Ridge parcel, 40 acres, deeded to Ruth Ann Calloway Vance in 1968. Her father's notary seals on it. I'd know that seal blind, and you can call anybody in this county who'd tell you the same." Denny took the paper. He didn't read it fast. Travis watched his eyes move down the page, watched something shift in his face. A man realizing the ground under his own boots had gotten complicated. "Ma'am," Denny said to Ruth this time, "if this is real, I've got no business staking anything on this ridge." "It's real," Ruth said. Wade stepped forward. "Mama, I didn't know. I swear to you I didn't know." Ruth finally looked at him. Not cold. Tired, maybe, the way a person gets tired of a thing they've carried a long way. "I believe you didn't know, Wade," she said. "That was always the trouble. You never asked." Nobody spoke for a second. Even Denny's crew had stopped, tape measure hanging loose in one man's hand, transit forgotten. "Daddy told me something the year I married," Ruth said. "To all of them now. To the ridge, to the stakes, to the tin box that wasn't even here anymore, but might as well have been standing in the dirt with them. He said, "Don't ever let a husband's name or a son's hurry sign for what's already yours." She let that sit a second. "I didn't listen good enough the first 40 years. I listened just in time for the last one." Wade's jaw worked like he wanted to answer that and couldn't find the words heavy enough. Denny cleared his throat, paper still in his hand. "I need to call my office." "Do that," Hollis said. Denny walked off toward the flatbed, phone already at his ear, and the rest of them stood in a loose half-circle around the fourth stake, orange ribbon ticking in the wind. Faye stepped up beside Ruth, folder under her arm, same as always. "This is the part where we let the paperwork do the talking," she said quietly. "You've done yours." "I know it," Ruth said, but she didn't step back. She stood right where she was, close enough to the fence line that she could put a hand on the old wood if she'd wanted to, close enough that anybody looking would know exactly whose ground this was. Travis came around from the spring house, hands still faintly smelling of the oil he'd used on new hinges. He hadn't said much since the truck pulled up, and Ruth turned to him now like she'd been saving something for exactly this moment. "You're the one found it," she said. "Found what, ma'am?" "The tin box. Behind that door." She nodded toward the spring house, toward the swollen board and the little door behind it he'd pried open himself 2 days back. "If you hadn't gone looking, none of this stands here today. I was just clearing junk out," Travis said. "Didn't know I was clearing out a war?" "Most wars start with somebody clearing junk," Ruth said, and something in her mouth almost smiled. Denny came back from the flatbed, phone still in hand, face gone careful. "Office wants me to hold everything till they can get a lawyer to look at that deed copy," he said. "Told me not to pull the stakes already in the ground yet, but not to set any more either." "They'll be pulling them," Hollis said. "Give it a week." "That's not up to me," Denny said, "but I'll tell you this much." He looked at Ruth now, not unkind. "My supervisor didn't sound surprised. He sounded like a man who'd been waiting on a phone call like this one." Wade caught that. "What's that mean?" "Means I don't think this is news to Bearclaw," Denny said. "Means somebody up the chain's known about a clout on this title a good deal longer than today." He shrugged into his vest, uncomfortable, like the words were bigger than his job wanted them to be. "Not my business to say more than that. I just stake what they tell me to stake." Hollis's eyes had gone sharp in a way Travis hadn't seen on him yet, not even in the courthouse hallway. "That March inquiry," Hollis said, half to himself. Bearclaw asking Denise about lease value on this ridge months before the sale ever closed. He looked at Ruth. "They knew what they were buying, Ruth, or what they thought they were buying cheap." "They knew," Ruth said, like she'd already worked that much out on the drive up, same as my son didn't. Wade flinched at that, small, like a man taking a hit he'd agreed he deserved. Faye had her phone out now, thumb moving. "I want Denise Marsh's inquiry log pulled today," she said, mostly to herself, then looked up. "If Bearclaw solicited a lease on this parcel before the closing date, that's not just a bad deal for Wade. That's a company that bought land it already suspected wasn't clean to sell and said nothing." "Meaning what?" Travis asked. "Meaning the $89,000 was never really a farm price," Faye said. "It was a discount on a company hoping nobody in this hollow would ever open a spring house door." The wind moved through the blackberry cane behind them, dragging the smell of dust and green growth across the ridge. Denny's crew stood off to the side now, not working, just watching, the way men watch a storm that's decided not to hit them directly. Ruth walked a few steps closer to the nearest stake, the one nearest the fence line, and crouched down slow, one hand braced on her knee, and pulled it straight up out of the ground. Orange ribbon and all. She held it a second, looking at it like it was a small strange thing that had washed up somewhere it didn't belong. "Ma'am," Denny started. "I'm not sure you're supposed to. I own the dirt it was standing in," Ruth said. "I reckon I can hold it a minute." Nobody argued that. She looked past the stake, up toward the tree line at the top of the ridge, where the rock face showed pale gray through gaps in the leaf cover, the same rock her father had walked her over the year she married, telling her what it was and who it belonged to and what it would always belong to, no matter whose hurry came along later wanting otherwise. "This is Callaway ground," she said, quiet, mostly to the ridge itself. Always was. Wade stood a little apart from everyone else, hands in his pockets, looking like a man watching a debt come due that he'd convinced himself for months wasn't real. He didn't argue. He didn't have anything left to argue with. Hollis moved to stand beside Ruth, the two of them looking up at that rock face together like old friends reading a familiar letter. "Your daddy'd be proud of this morning," Hollis said. "He'd be proud I finally listened," Ruth said. "Took me long enough." Denny's phone buzzed again in his hand. He looked at it, then at the group of them standing in a loose ring around a hole where a stake used to be, and didn't answer it right away. "They're going to want a meeting," he said finally. "Somebody official from Bear Claw. Soon." "Good," Faye said. "Tell them we'll be there." Hollis Pruitt sat on the tailgate as Ruth held that ribboned stake and watched the survey crew, one by one, start loading their gear back onto the flatbed without another word from anybody telling them to. Denny's phone rang again before he'd taken 3 steps. He answered fast this time, like a man glad for an excuse to look away from Ruth. "This is Denny." A pause. "Yes, sir, she's here now. Deed's got a county recorder standing right next to it." Another pause. Longer. "I understand. I'll tell them." He lowered the phone. "That was our regional office. They want a call set up. Today, if you'll take it?" "We'll take it," Faye said. Denny held the phone out, not to Ruth, but to Faye. "Man's name is Carl Isom. Says he's Bear Claw's land acquisitions director." Faye took the phone like she'd been handed worse things in courtrooms before. "This is Faye Combs, attorney for Ruth Vance." She listened. Her eyebrows went up half an inch. "No, Mr. Isom, I don't think you understand the situation yet. Let me lay it out plain." She walked a few steps off toward the fence line, voice low and even. The rest of them stood in the sun and watched her back, the way you watch somebody diffusing something without knowing exactly which wire they've cut. "March 14th, Faye said into the phone. "Your company inquired with the county assessor about lease value on a 40-acre ridge parcel behind the Vance farmhouse. 4 months before you closed on that farm for $89,000. She waited. "I have the inquiry log. Denise Marsh pulled it an hour ago." Wade's face had gone the color of old plaster. "They knew," he said, "to nobody, to everybody. The whole time they knew what that ridge was worth, and they still gave me $89,000 for the whole 110 acres. They knew," Hollis said, "not unkind, just factual, the way he'd say a name off a deed. You didn't." "I should have checked," Wade said. "I should have had somebody look at that ridge before I signed anything." "You should have asked your mother," Ruth said. She still had the stake in her hand. She hadn't let go of it since she pulled it. "I was sitting right there in that farmhouse the whole time you were making calls. You never once asked me what was up on that hill." Wade didn't answer that. There wasn't an answer that fixed it. Faye came back holding the phone against her shoulder now, waiting. "He wants to talk to you directly, Ruth, if you're willing." Ruth looked at the phone like it was a snake somebody was asking her to hold. Then she reached out and took it. "This is Ruth Vance." The voice on the other end was smooth, practiced. The kind of voice that had said sorry to 100 landowners and meant it exactly as much each time. "Mrs. Vance, I want to start by saying Bear Claw values every relationship in Persimmon Fork, and if there's been some confusion about parcel boundaries, we're happy to sit down and sort it out amicably." "There's no confusion," Ruth said. "You knew what that ridge was worth in March. You bought my whole farm cheap in June, hoping nobody would ever open a springhouse door." Silence on the line. "Not long. Long enough." "I'd like to schedule a meeting," Isom said. "This week, if possible. We can discuss a fair lease arrangement going forward." $740,000, Ruth said. "That's the number I hear you've been offering other landowners on rock like mine. I expect the same number, not a friendly discount because I'm 78 and you figured I wouldn't check." Hollis's mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, something prouder than that. "We'll discuss terms when we meet," Isom said. "A little less smooth now." "We'll discuss terms with my lawyer," Ruth said, and handed the phone back to Faye like she was done with it, which she was. Faye finished the call in 4 short sentences and hung up. "Thursday. Their office in Bristol. I'll draft terms before then." She looked at Ruth. "You didn't need me for that part. I needed you for the parts I don't know the words to," Ruth said. "I know the number. Otis taught me the number a long time ago." Denny's crew had the last stake pulled by then, tape measure coiled, transit folded into its case. Denny himself stood off near the flatbed, watching the group of them the way a man watches something he'd rather not have been standing in the middle of. "Ma'am," he said to Ruth, "for what it's worth, I hope this works out the way it ought to." It will, Ruth said, now that it's got daylight on it. The flatbed pulled off down the logging track a few minutes later, gravel popping the same as it had on the way in, only slower now, like even the truck knew it wasn't in a hurry anymore. That left the six of them standing on the ridge in the quiet after. Wade hadn't moved far. He stood near the old fence corner, hands still in his pockets, looking at his mother like a man trying to remember how to talk to somebody he'd spent his whole life half listening to. "Mama," he said finally, "I owe you more than an apology. I know that. You owe the bank about $11,000 on that truck," Ruth said. "And the lake house is going to want the rest of that down payment covered somehow, since $89,000 isn't coming back to you whole. That's yours to carry, Wade, not mine. I know it." "I'm not going to fix that for you," Ruth said. "I fixed the part that was mine to fix. The ridge. That's all I had strength left for." Wade nodded slow, like a man accepting a bill he couldn't argue down. Travis had stayed quiet through most of it, standing near the spring house with his hands loose at his sides, watching a family sort out 50 years of not talking to each other in the space of 20 minutes. He caught Ruth's eye once she'd said her piece to Wade, and she came his way, the stake still in her hand. "You're the one who pried that door," she said again, like she wanted it said twice, once for the record and once for herself. "Yes, ma'am." "What made you keep at it? Most men would have nailed it shut and called it storage." Travis thought about it. Hasp was rusted through in a way that didn't make sense for a door nobody cared about, he said. Somebody built that door to last. Seemed like it ought to be guarding something worth the trouble. "It was," Ruth said. She looked past him at the spring house itself, weathered gray boards, the new hinges shining a little too bright against the old wood. "That door's been locked longer than you've been alive," she said. "Longer than my son's marriage, even. I put that box in there the week Wade first started talking about selling. Didn't even tell Otis's own memory what I was doing. Just did it." "Why didn't you just tell somebody?" Wade asked, and it came out rough, almost angry, though not at her, angry at the shape of the whole thing. Ruth turned to him. "Because the last time I trusted somebody with a piece of paper," she said, "he signed it without reading it, and moved a truck into my yard before the ink dried. That landed the way she meant it to." Wade didn't flinch away from it. He took it, the way a man takes weather he'd been warned about and stood in anyway. "Mama, sign here, they're waiting." Ruth said the words slow, like she was reading them off a stone somewhere. "That's what you told me, that morning. You didn't even look up to see my hands shake." Wade's jaw worked. "I remember." Ruth reached into the folder Faye still had tucked under one arm, pulled loose a copy of the recorded deed, and held it out to her son. Not the original, a copy, clean and flat. "Sign here," she said, and put her finger on a blank line at the bottom, a line that wasn't part of any deed at all, just a witness acknowledgement Faye had drafted that morning stating Wade recognized the ridge parcel had never been his to sell. Wade looked at the paper a long moment, looked at his mother's finger still resting on the line. "This time you're going to read it first," Ruth said. "Every word. However long it takes." Wade read it. He read it slow, the way a man reads something that's costing him more the longer he looks at it. Then he took the pen Faye handed him, and he signed. "There," Ruth said, when he was done. "Now we're even on clipboards at least." Nobody laughed exactly, but something in the group loosened, the kind of loosening that comes after a long-held breath finally let go. Hollis walked over to the spring house door, the outer one Travis had hung fresh, and ran a thumb along the new wood like he was checking somebody's work. "Good hinges," he said. "Had to replace the old ones," Travis said. "Rot had gotten into the frame some." "Your granddaddy built that inner door to outlast him," Ruth said, coming up beside Hollis. "I expect it near did." "It held 50 years, Hollis said. "That's not luck. That's a man who built things to matter." Ruth touched the doorframe herself, light, the way you'd touch a person's shoulder instead of shaking their hand. "Otis used to say a door's only as good as what somebody trusts it to keep," she said. "I trusted it with the only thing in the world that could still speak for me once my voice stopped being enough." Travis looked at the old inner door still standing open behind the new outer one, the rusted hasp hanging loose where he'd pried it, tin box long since carried away to a courthouse and a hearing, and now a ridge full of orange ribbon lying loose in the grass. "What happens to the box now?" he asked. "Faye's got the original locked up safe," Ruth said, "but I want that tin back once the courts are through with it. Feed sack and all. It's earned a place back in that spring house, empty or not." I'll clear a shelf, Travis said. See that you do. The sun had climbed higher while they stood there, throwing shorter shadows across the stake holes and the flattened grass where a survey crew had spent a morning marking land that was never theirs to mark. Wade stood a little apart still, folded copy of the deed in one hand, looking like a man doing arithmetic he couldn't make come out any better no matter how many times he ran it. I'll drive you back to Sunset Manor, he said finally, to his mother. If you want, whenever you're ready. Ruth looked at him a long moment. I'm not going back to Sunset Manor, Wade, she said. Not tonight. Not any night after this one. Mama, you signed papers. I checked myself out this morning, Ruth said. Before the courthouse. I'm not spending another night paying rent on a room I never needed in the first place. Wade opened his mouth like he wanted to argue, then looked at Hollis, at Faye, at Travis standing by the door of a house that used to be his mother's kitchen, and closed it again. Where will you stay? He asked instead, quieter. Ruth looked toward the farmhouse, down the slope past the spring house, its porch light still burning in the daylight because nobody had thought yet to turn it off. That's a conversation I mean to have with Mr. Boone, she said, provided he's willing to sit at his own kitchen table with an old woman for an hour. Travis didn't hesitate. Ma'am, that table's not going anywhere, and neither am I. Come on down whenever you're ready. Travis had coffee going before Ruth's boots hit the porch steps that evening. Hollis came with her, and Faye trailed behind carrying the folder like she still didn't trust it out of her hands. Sit anywhere you like, Travis said. Table's the same one, I expect. Same table, Ruth said. New coffee, though. Smells better than what I used to make. Wife's recipe, Travis said. She'd have liked meeting you. Ruth pulled out a chair, the same chair she'd sat in for 50 years, and lowered herself into it slow, the way a person sits down after a long day standing. Hollis took the chair across from her. Faye stayed by the counter, folder tucked under one arm, watching the room instead of sitting in it. I want to talk terms, Ruth said. Not lawyer terms. Kitchen terms. Travis leaned against the counter, mug in hand. All right. You bought a farm, Ruth said. Turns out you bought less farm than you thought and more headache than you bargained on. I got the better end of that trade, Travis said. Spring House alone was worth the headache. I want to stay in this house, Ruth said. Not the Ridge. The house. I'll pay you rent, same as anybody would once the lease money starts coming in. Travis shook his head before she'd finished the sentence. No rent. I didn't ask your opinion on the rent, Ruth said. I told you the terms. Hollis laughed short and dry. She's not asking, son. She's informing you. Travis set his mug down. Fine, you'll pay rent, but it's going to be the same dollar my granddaddy would have charged, which was nothing, because neighbors don't charge neighbors. You're not my neighbor, Ruth said. You're my landlord, technically. Technically, I'm the fool who pried open a door I had no business touching, Travis said. I figure that evens it out. Ruth studied him a second, the way she'd studied the steak before she pulled it. Then she nodded, once, like a deal closing. I'll bring my own jars down from the manor, she said. Chow chow. I've got 4 years dated and not a one of them opened. Shelf space in the pantry's yours, Travis said. Always was, I figure. Faye cleared her throat from the counter. There's a term I need on paper, not just kitchen terms. Ruth stays in the house as a life tenant. Travis farms the bottomland, same as he's already doing. The Ridge lease, once it's signed, splits into an account with Ruth's name on it and nobody else's. Write it however you need, Ruth said, long as everybody in this room can still look each other in the eye after. Headlights swept across the kitchen window before anybody answered that. A truck door slammed outside, quieter than the day at the Ridge, more like a man closing a door on purpose instead of in anger. Wade came up the porch steps, slow. He knocked, which struck Ruth as strange enough that she said so. You never used to knock on this door in your life, she said, when Travis let him in. Didn't feel right walking in on my own, Wade said. Not tonight. He stood just past the threshold, cap in his hand, looking smaller in that kitchen than he had on the Ridge that morning. I sold the four-wheeler, he said, this afternoon. Fellow over in Wise County gave me $2,200 for it. He set an envelope on the table, careful, like it might spill. That's not near what I owe you, Mama. I know that, but it's a start. And I mean to keep starting until it's square. Ruth looked at the envelope. She didn't touch it yet. What about the lake house? She asked. Talked to Cheryl tonight, Wade said. We're pulling out of the deal, losing the $12,000 down, but I'd rather lose that than keep building a life on ground I stole out from under my own mother. Nobody in the kitchen said anything to that for a second. Hollis looked into his coffee like it had suddenly gotten interesting. That's a hard number to lose, Ruth said finally. Cheaper than what it was costing me otherwise, Wade said. Ruth picked up the envelope then, turned it over once and set it back down without opening it. I'll take this, she said. Not because it settles anything, because you drove out here and knocked on a door instead of calling a lawyer to argue the number down. I'm not arguing anything, Wade said. Not with you. Not anymore. Good, Ruth said. Arguing was never going to buy that ridge back for you anyway. Wade nodded, turned his cap over once in his hands. Faye said there's a meeting Thursday in Bristol. There is, Faye said. Bearclaw's sending Carl Isom in person this time, along with somebody from their legal department, I expect. I'd like to come, Wade said. Not to talk, just to sit in the room and hear it settled proper, if that's allowed. Ruth looked at Hollis. Hollis shrugged, the shrug of a man who'd stopped being surprised by anything that Hollow could produce. You can sit in the room, Ruth said. You don't get a chair at the table. There's a difference. I understand the difference, Wade said. I didn't used to. I do now. Faye had already opened the folder again, flipping to a page near the back. Thursday, 10 o'clock, she said. I want the recorded deed with us, the inquiry log, and Hollis, if you're willing to speak to the ledger yourself. I filed deeds in this county 40 years, Hollis said. I'll speak to whatever paper needs speaking to. Ruth looked around the table, at Travis leaning against his own counter in his own house, at Faye with her folder, at Hollis with his coffee, at her son standing just inside a door he used to walk through without knocking. 10 o'clock, she said. I'll want to be there early. I don't like walking into a room after the other side's already settled into their chairs. I'll drive you, Travis said. I know you will, Ruth said. That's why I asked you to keep a shelf clear, and not just for the jars. The Bristol office smelled like new carpet and coffee that had sat too long on a burner. Bearclaw Aggregates took up the whole third floor of a glass building off State Street, the kind of place that made Ruth's boots sound too loud on the floor. Faye had them there by 9:40. Ruth wanted to be early. I don't like walking in after, she said again, settling into a chair across from a long table. Let them walk in on me. Hollis sat to her right, a cardboard folder of his own tucked under one arm, older and softer than Faye's. Wade came in last, quiet, and took a chair against the wall, off to the side, exactly where Ruth had told him a chair like that existed. Carl Isom arrived at 10 on the nose, gray suit, a leather folio, and a woman beside him he introduced as Bearclaw's counsel, Denise Pruitt. No relation to Hollis, she said quickly, like she'd had to say it before. Mrs. Vance, Isom said, offering a hand. Glad we could get this sorted out like neighbors. We're not neighbors, Ruth said. You made an offer on my land without knowing whose name was on it. That's not neighborly, that's careless. Isom's smile held, barely. He sat. We're prepared to discuss a lease on the Ridge parcel. 40 acres, is that right? 40 acres, Hollis said. Recorded 1968. I filed deeds in this county 40 years. I know the parcel. We understand there's some history there, Denise Pruitt said, opening her folio. There's more than history, Hollis said. He slid a photocopy across the table, crisp, black ink on white. This is your own company's inquiry letter, dated 14 months ago, asking the county assessor about mineral rights on the Callaway Ridge, before you ever made an offer on the farm. Isom looked at it a long moment. He didn't touch it. We do a lot of preliminary inquiries, he said. You do a lot of preliminary inquiries on rock you already know is worth $740,000, Ruth said. That's the number your own geologist put in a report to the county last spring. I've seen it. Mr. Pruitt found it for me. The room went quiet enough that Ruth could hear the air conditioning cycle on. That report wasn't meant for public record, Denise Pruitt said. It's a public record now, Hollis said. Filed the same week I recorded Ruth's deed. Anybody can walk in and ask for it. Wade, over by the wall, shifted in his chair. He didn't say anything. His eyes were on his mother. Isom set the copy down finally. Let's talk terms then, he said. We're prepared to offer a royalty structure. $2.50 per ton extracted, with a guaranteed minimum of $40,000 a year regardless of tonnage. That's the number you offered the Combs place 2 counties over. Ruth said. I made a phone call of my own before I came down here. Combs got $3 a ton and a 60,000 minimum, and their rock doesn't test half as clean as mine does. Isom looked at Denise Pruitt. Denise Pruitt looked at her folio like it might have a different number written in it if she looked hard enough. $3 a ton, Ruth said again, slower. 60,000 minimum, 10-year term, renewable, same as Combs got. I'm not asking for more than my neighbor. I'm asking for what my rock is worth. That's a significant increase over our opening position, Isom said. Your opening position assumed I was 78 and wouldn't check, Ruth said. I checked. Faye slid a single typed page across the table. Terms already drafted, blank lines waiting. This is the agreement Mrs. Vance is prepared to sign today, she said. $3 a ton, 60,000 annual minimum, 10 years, standard renewal language. If Bear Claw wants a different number, they can explain to the county why their own report says otherwise. Isom read it. He read it slower than a man who wanted to be read reading it, buying himself time that wasn't going to change what was on the page. I'll need to call our office, he said. Call them, Ruth said. I've got all morning. I already gave up a night at Sunset Manor that I wasn't using anyway. Isom stepped out into the hall with his phone. Denise Pruitt stayed at the table, quiet, flipping a pen between two fingers like she was doing arithmetic she already knew the answer to. Hollis leaned toward Ruth while they waited. You did good, he said, low. I had the number a long time before you found me that report, Ruth said. Otis taught me numbers don't lie even when people do. Wade spoke up from his chair against the wall, first words he'd said since he sat down. Is that where you learned it? From Pawpaw? Ruth turned to look at him. Your grandfather deeded me that ridge the year I married your daddy, she said. Told me one thing when he handed me the paper. Said don't ever let a husband's name or a son's hurry sign for what's already yours. The room held that a second. Denise Pruitt stopped flipping her pen. I didn't understand it then, Ruth said. I understood it the morning you put a clipboard in front of me and told me to sign where they were waiting. Wade didn't answer that. He looked at the floor, then back up at her like a man deciding whether looking away was its own kind of lie. I understand it now, he said. Isom came back in a few minutes later, phone still in his hand, jaw set in the way of a man who'd been told something on a call he didn't care for. We can do $3 a ton, he said. 60,000 minimum. 10 years. He paused. Our legal department would like it noted that Bear Claw regrets any confusion around the original parcel transfer. Note whatever you like, Ruth said. Just put the number where I can sign it. Faye slid the page back across for Isom's signature first. He signed it without reading it twice, the opposite of what Ruth had once made her own son do, and Ruth noticed that too, filed it away without saying it out loud. Then it came to her. Faye set the pen in her hand. Ruth looked at the blank line a moment before she signed it. $3 a ton, she said, like she was saying it to somebody who wasn't in the room anymore. Otis, you'd have liked that number. She signed her name, full, Ruth Ann Vance, the same signature she'd used on every jar label for 50 years, steady enough that anybody watching would have had a hard time believing her hands had ever shaken over a clipboard at all. The drive back from Bristol took 40 minutes, and Ruth spent most of it looking out the window instead of talking. Hollis rode up front with Travis. Faye followed behind in her own car, folder locked in the back seat like cargo that mattered. You're quiet, Hollis said, glancing over at Ruth in the mirror. I'm doing arithmetic, Ruth said. $3 a ton adds up different than I expected. Good different or bad different? Good enough I don't trust it yet, Ruth said. I'll trust it once the first check clears. Travis turned onto Larkspur Creek Road, past the mailbox with Vance still stenciled on the side, past the fence line Otis had strung wire on 60 years back. The farmhouse came into view the way it always did, sudden, past the last bend. Home, Hollis said, like he'd been the one waiting on it. Not mine, Travis said. Not on paper. But I know what you mean. They pulled in around back, and Wade's truck was already parked by the barn. Ruth stiffened a little, seeing it. He said he'd come by, she said. I didn't think he'd beat us here. Wade was sitting on the tailgate when they got out, hands folded, cap off. He stood when he saw his mother. How'd it go? He asked. $3 a ton, Ruth said. 60,000 minimum. 10 years. Wade let out a breath. That's real money, Mama. It's real money on land that was already mine, Ruth said. Don't confuse the two things. He nodded, took the correction without arguing it. That was new too, and Ruth noticed it same as she'd noticed the knock on the door. I brought something, Wade said. He reached into the truck bed and pulled out a small metal toolbox, scratched old. This was Pawpaw's. I found it in my garage last night, going through things. I don't know how it ended up with me instead of you. Ruth took it, turned it over. Otis Calloway's initials were scratched into the lid, faint, the way a man marks a thing he plans on keeping a long time. He used this for harness repair, Ruth said. Rivets and awls. I remember the smell of the oil in it. I don't want anything of his I didn't earn, Wade said. That's yours. Should have been yours all along. Ruth held the box a moment, then set it on the tailgate beside him. Keep it, she said. Wade looked confused. Mama, I just said I heard what you said, Ruth said. I'm giving it back to you anyway. Your grandfather would want a Calloway using those tools, not sitting in a china cabinet. I'm not much of a Calloway lately, Wade said, quiet. You're working on it, Ruth said. That's different than not being one. Wade picked the toolbox back up, held it against his chest like it weighed more than it did. I put $400 in a fund yesterday, he said, for the fire department, the one that answered when Pawpaw's barn caught years back. Never paid them anything for it at the time. Figured it was past due. $400 won't fix what needs fixing between us, Ruth said. I know that, Wade said. It's not supposed to fix it. It's supposed to be a start, same as the truck money was. Ruth studied him. You keep saying start, she said. I want to see you say middle one of these days, and then end. Working on that too, Wade said. Hollis had wandered off toward the spring house while they talked, the way an old man drifts toward the thing that still interests him most. Travis followed, and after a minute so did Ruth, leaving Wade at the truck with his grandfather's toolbox and his own thoughts. The spring house door still hung open on its new hinges, the swollen outer board replaced with a plank that hadn't weathered yet, pale against the gray wood around it. The inner door stood open too, the rusted hasp gone, a new brass one in its place, unlocked. You fixed it already, Ruth said. Didn't feel right leaving it broke, Travis said. Not after what it held. Ruth stepped inside. The spring still ran along the back wall. Same sound it had made her whole life, water finding its way over stone without needing anybody's permission. I used to hide out in here as a girl, she said, whenever Otis and my mother argued, cool in the summer. Nobody thought to look for me here because nobody thought a child would want to sit next to a spring instead of a creek. Smart place to hide, Travis said. Smart place to hide a deed too, it turns out. I didn't think of it as hiding, Ruth said. I thought of it as putting something where it'd still be there when I needed it. There's a difference. Hollis ran a hand along the inner door frame, the same motion he'd made the first day he stood here with Travis. Otis built this door heavier than it needed to be, he said. I remember him telling me once, a door's only as honest as what a man's willing to put behind it. He built a lot of things heavier than they needed to be, Ruth said. Said light things get moved by people who shouldn't be moving them. Faye came in behind them, folder still under her arm out of habit, even though there was nothing left in it that needed carrying today. I called the paper this morning, she said, the one in Wise County. They want to run something on the deed, the lease, all of it. Human interest, they said. Human interest, Ruth repeated, like she was testing the phrase for weight. I don't need my business in a paper. You don't have to talk to them, Faye said. But I thought you'd want to know Bear Claw's already asking that the story downplay the part where they knew the value beforehand. Of course they are, Hollis said. Man doesn't like his own carelessness printed next to his name. It wasn't carelessness, Ruth said. Carelessness is an accident. This was a company that priced a thing they already knew the worth of and hoped nobody else would find out. That's the word I'll use then, Faye said. If you decide to talk to them. Ruth looked around the spring house a moment longer, at the spring running steady, at the two doors standing open where they used to stand locked. I might talk to them, she said. Not for myself, for every family up and down this creek with an old deed sitting in a box somewhere, not knowing what it's worth. Might do somebody some good to hear it. Travis had been quiet, leaning against the doorframe, watching the water same as Ruth was. I've been meaning to ask, he said, now that the lease is settled. What do you want done with this place? The spring house, I mean. It still works. Water's clean. I had it tested last month before any of this happened. Keep it working, Ruth said. Farm's not a farm without a spring house that runs. I meant something else too, Travis said. I want to put a shelf back in here. Not the tin box that's evidence now, courthouse has it, but a shelf. For whatever comes after. Ruth looked at him a long moment, the way she'd looked at Wade across the kitchen table, weighing a man's words against what he'd actually done so far. You've got sawdust in your hair, she said. You started already, didn't you? Cut the boards this morning, Travis admitted, before we ever left for Bristol. Figured either way the meeting went, this door needed finishing. That's the kind of man Otis would have trusted with a deed, Hollis said. Finishes the shelf before he knows if there's anything worth putting on it. Ruth didn't say anything to that, but she reached out and laid her hand flat against the new plank on the outer door, the pale wood warm from the morning sun, and left it there a moment like she was taking its measure the way she'd once taken the measure of a stake driven into her own ground. Ruth left her hand on the plank a moment longer, then stepped back into the sun. Sign needs to go up here eventually, she said, something that says what this ground is. Travis nodded like he'd already thought the same thing. I was going to ask you what to call it. Callaway Ridge, Ruth said. Not Vance. Callaway. That's whose name was on the deed my whole life, even when I didn't say it out loud. I can have a board cut by Friday, Travis said. Cut it today, Ruth said. I've waited long enough on plenty of things. This one doesn't need to be one of them. Hollis laughed, short, and clapped Travis on the shoulder. Man's already got sawdust in his hair. Might as well put it to use twice in one day. They walked back up toward the house, past the barn where Wade still stood with his grandfather's toolbox held against his chest. He watched them come, reading something in Ruth's face before she said a word. What's this about a sign? He asked. Callaway Ridge, Ruth said. Going up over the springhouse door, Wade set the toolbox down on the tailgate. You're naming it after Papa, not after us. I'm naming it after the man who taught me to keep a deed where a hurry couldn't find it, Ruth said. You want your name on something, Wade? You go earn it same as he did. He took that the way he'd taken the correction earlier. Quiet, no argument in him. Fair, he said. Faye's phone buzzed in her jacket pocket. She read the screen, then looked up. That's the county clerk's office, she said. They want confirmation the ridge parcel's been pulled off Bear Claw's original purchase file. Standard cleanup, they said. But listen to the rest. She read from the message. Clerk says 2 other families on Larkspur Creek called this week asking for a title search on their own mineral rights. Word's gotten around. Word travels fast in a hollow this size, Hollis said. Always has. One of them's the Ledford place, Faye said. Retta Ledford, 81 years old, alone since her husband passed. Nobody's checked her deed in 30 years. Ruth stood still a second. Somebody ought to check it for her, she said. Not wait on her to ask twice. I already told the clerk I'd go by, Hollis said. Tomorrow morning. Same folder, same courthouse ledger. Won't take but an hour. Take Faye with you, Ruth said. She reads faster than you do these days. I read plenty fast, Hollis said, but he didn't argue past that. Wade looked between them, something moving behind his eyes. There's more of this than just us, he said, like the thought was new even though it shouldn't have been. There's 40 families on this creek, Ruth said, most of them with an old deed sitting in a drawer or a tin box same as I had one. Some of them selling cheap the same way you sold cheap because nobody told them different. I didn't know, Wade said. I know you didn't know, Ruth said. That's not the same as it being all right. He didn't answer that. He picked the toolbox back up instead, like his hands needed something to hold on to while his mother talked. They gathered on the porch a while later, Travis bringing out a pitcher of tea he'd made that morning before anybody left for Bristol, like he'd trusted all along there'd be something to celebrate by afternoon. Ruth sat in the rocker that had been hers before it was ever anybody else's, and for a moment nobody said much of anything, just the porch boards creaking and the creek running somewhere past the tree line. I want to ask you something, Wade said finally, sitting on the top step below her. About the truck money, and the $400 to the fire department. Go on, Ruth said. I want to do something bigger, he said, not to buy anything back. I know I can't buy back a farm I already sold out from under you, but there's other families on this creek who might get caught the way you almost got caught. I want to put money toward that, toward somebody like Hollis going around checking deeds before Bear Claw or anybody else gets to them first. Ruth studied him. How much money? She said. And where's it coming from? 6,000, Wade said. What's left after the lake house deposit and the truck? I was going to let it sit in savings. I don't want it sitting. $6,000 won't check 40 deeds, Ruth said. It'll check the first 10, Wade said. Hollis knows which ones to start with. Hollis leaned forward from where he stood by the porch rail. Ledford Place first, he said. Then the Combses, up past the church. Then the Pruitt land, no relation, before you ask. Everybody always asks, Denise Pruitt would have said, if she'd been there instead of back in Bristol, drafting a lease she hadn't wanted to draft. Ruth almost smiled at the thought of it. All right, Ruth said to Wade, $6,000. Not because it fixes what you did, because it might keep somebody else from needing fixed in the first place. That's the idea, Wade said. I'll believe it once Hollis tells me the first check cleared, Ruth said, same as the lease. Wade almost laughed at that, the first easy sound he'd made all day. You don't trust anything till the check clears, do you? Your grandfather taught me that too, Ruth said. Paper's only as good as what shows up in the bank. The afternoon went on that way, slow, the kind of slow Ruth hadn't let herself feel in longer than she wanted to admit. Travis disappeared around back and came out an hour later carrying a board, freshly cut, the letters burned into it with a woodworking iron he must have kept in his own truck. Callaway Ridge, plain block letters, no flourish to them. The kind of sign a man makes when he means it to last rather than to look nice. Ready when you are, he said. They walked down to the spring house together, all of them. Ruth leading though she didn't walk fast. Wade at the back with the toolbox still under one arm like he didn't know yet where it belonged. Travis held the sign up against the header above the outer door, and Hollis passed him nails one at a time, the same way he must have passed papers across a recorder's counter for 40 years. Steady, no wasted motion. The hammer sounded 3 times, then it was done. Travis stepped back to look at his own work. Otis would have liked the lettering plain like that, Hollis said. He never trusted a sign that tried too hard to be pretty. I didn't know him, Travis said, but I feel like I do now. You know him through a door he built heavier than it needed to be, Ruth said. That tells you most of what there is to know. She looked at the sign a long moment, at the open door beneath it, at the spring running steady in the dark behind it, same as it had run her whole life. Wade came to stand beside her, quiet, not quite touching her shoulder but close enough that she could feel he wanted to. I used to hide back here, Ruth said again, softer this time, to Wade instead of to Travis. Whenever your grandfather and my mother fought, I thought I was hiding from an argument. Turns out I was practicing for something bigger. I wish you'd told me, Wade said, about the deed, before any of this. I wish you'd asked me what was mine before you decided what wasn't, Ruth said. We're both wishing backward. Only one of us gets to do something about it going forward. I'm trying, Wade said. I know, Ruth said. Keep trying. Pass the money. Pass the sign. Pass today. Travis stood off to the side, letting them have the moment, the same way he had every time the family needed room. When Ruth turned to him at last, she found him watching the sign like a man checking his own handwriting. It was never about the money, Ruth told him. Not the lease, not the farm, none of it. It was about who kept their word when nobody was checking. You checked. That's the only reason any of this turned out the way it did. I just found a door that needed opening, Travis said. Doors don't open themselves, Ruth said. Somebody has to be the kind of man who tries the handle instead of walking past it. She stepped through into the spring house one more time, the water running cold and clear behind her, the new shelf standing empty against the wall, waiting on whatever came next to sit there. Outside, the sign caught the last of the afternoon light. Plain letters, Callaway Ridge, holding steady above a door that finally stayed open.